MAGA will be twerking for bugs.
Hello, everybody. Welcome. It is December 12th. It is Thursday. Happy Thursday, everybody, I suppose. Yes, I shaved. I know. Don't get mad at me. Stop. I know you're already like, what am I seeing on this fucking screen? I get it. I shaved and then I immediately regretted it, okay? It'll be back. It'll be back soon enough. The cool thing about facial hair is you don't lose it. Well, unless you have some kind of rare, like, facial alopecia a thing? I'll look that up later. Perfect. 1 minute in and I'm already scrolling. Thanks, everybody, for tuning in to this episode of Snow Himbo. I'm your host, Snow Himbo, and joining me tonight is Comrade Leah.
Yeah. Hey, guys.
So, super happy you were able to join us tonight here.
Yeah, thanks for having me on.
No, for sure. So the primary reason, I'm just gonna be selfish. The primary reason I wanted to have you on is because I think film spectacle is really based, and I think advancing our agenda would be getting more eyeballs on that. Because I'm not gonna lie, a while back I thought, like, imagine, and this is why I like went nuts initially when I found your channel. I was like, oh my god, this is so cool. I'm like fangirling. Because a while back I was like, it would be really cool if someone did like materialist analysis, but to like film. And I thought it would be good for TV shows too, but for some reason I always felt TV shows were a lot more reactionary. Even in Breaking Bad, something that clearly has like a very specific materialist analysis, it seems like with TV shows, I don't know, like,
yeah,
the capitalism just like drips in. I don't know what that's about.
Yeah, I think it's dawned on me, especially lately, how much of our propaganda is based in Hollywood too. Like, it's not just the deep state working in the mainstream media. It's very much the entire spectacle, like not just social media either. It's very much Hollywood. Like, deep propaganda has been happening for, I mean, honestly, like since beginning of Hollywood, but especially since the Red Scare that happened, where they blacklisted all communists and socialists from Hollywood. And since then, it's been like, we're going to incorporate CIA people. We're going to send our actors to the CIA to learn more about their roles. And it's very much like this revolving door between the deep state and Hollywood. And as a film lover, like, I love movies with passion. I used to want to be a movie producer. So it like breaks my heart at the end of the day to see how manipulative like Hollywood propaganda has been in my life, especially. So like, I feel like I'm just now pulling back the curtain more and more as I get into my channel, but I'm excited to do it nonetheless, because there's a lot to go through.
No, there absolutely is. I have a background in film as well. One of my first jobs as a grown adult, actually, was a video editor.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, I was one of those film nerds who was like, I'm gonna write a script that's gonna be like better than everybody else's, and it's gonna change the world. And of course, it's like 8 million. Like, what can we do like Quentin Tarantino? I was so cringe as a 20-year-old, man. Oh my god.
Same. 20s are brutal. I feel like, yeah.
But like, I get what you mean, because like honestly, not only do I notice, like, I don't know what it is with liberals and like Marvel movies, but I feel like the Marvel movies are like the front and center of the propaganda sphere, because they cover everything. They cover military industrial complex. They cover, I mean,
Someone's gonna save
capitalism.
the day.
Yeah, someone's going to save the day, and they're always rich. That's always the superpower. Look at Iron Man. I mean, look at even
Yeah.
Batman. It's like
Yeah.
the heroes are always the people who just happen to have the most capital. And I
Yeah.
feel like that's a really under discussed role when it comes to when it comes to like the way the average person kind of frames rich people. And we're seeing it a lot now with
Mhm.
you know, I call it Hamstergate because the CEO looks like a hamster, but we could call it CEO Gate, we call it Health Gate, Luigi Gate, I don't know, but you're seeing it with a lot of this weird like CEO simping out there. And I find a lot of people are kind of confused and wondering like, okay, well, what's behind this? And I'm like, well, look at the media that people consume.
Yeah, I
Everything.
mean, it's decades of propaganda. Decades. I mean, decades. Like my dad is my parents are both baby boomers. I watched a lot of older movies growing up. So I remember, and one of my dad's favorite genres is westerns from the 50s, especially 50s and 60s westerns.
Mine too. My favorite director, Sergio Leone.
I mean, pure propaganda, like
yep.
pure propaganda. Again, like this goes so deep, and like we've been slowly conditioned over time to accept a lot of these hero tropes. A lot of the same Western narratives are just, you know, based on a true story, told as historical nonfiction in a sense. But so it's like very much we learn our history through our film. Like we learn, but it's the wrong history. It's not the real history. It's Hollywood's history that we're being fed. And that's how it is with all of it, I guess, is like the overall narrative that we're being fed on a daily basis. And as someone that comes from a film background, I think a lot about narratives, and because I love telling stories too. And so I just think a lot about storytelling, and at the end of the day, that's what they're doing with us on a daily basis, is everything that's trending in the media, you know, everything we're being told to look at is part of this narrative that they're spinning for us constantly. It's impossible for all of us to keep up with it. Like it's never ending.
You know what I find really, I don't know if you've ever done this yourself, but since becoming like radicalized, because, you know, like many other people here, I started out as a shit lib, obviously. I didn't really have any like right wing anything. I
grew up right wing.
Grew up right wing? Damn, okay.
Well, like by label, yeah. I mean, I would say I've always been a communist, because at the end of the day, I always believed in taking care of the most vulnerable and downtrodden in the community. But it was through this right wing, my parents are right wing Republican, whatever, but it was very much instilled in me, like Republicans are the party of family values. They're going to fight for the family. And I mean, as a 10-year-old, that was very appealing to me. Like I didn't question it, because I was just like, yeah, my parents are cool people. Like they can't steer me wrong. So it wasn't until like college that I started kind of getting into politics and like went further left progressively. I just keep going left at this point. So it can happen. You can start. I mean, like you don't want to know the first person I voted for. Do you want to guess?
Bush.
Okay, I'm not that old, but McCain Palin.
Sorry?
That was McCain Palin. That was my first election voting.
Okay.
So I was like hook, line, sinker. I'm going to vote for the party my parents support. I wasn't focused on politics. I was focused on I'm going to college and like I don't know.
Yeah.
I didn't think about politics much at that time. And since then, it's been a eye-opening experience every step of the way, like realizing how manipulated I was. And so I guess that's part of my background, is just feeling like, wow, I was really lied to on all of it, like on religion, on politics, on all of it. I was lied to. And it took me a long time to get through that.
Mm-hmm.
And then, here I am in the aftermath, trying to hopefully pull back the curtain for other people, especially when it comes to Hollywood propaganda, because we're swimming in it.
Yeah. I mean, I was gonna say, like, it's entirely possible for... I was gonna say, I know people who are, like, as far right as possible, and then they became Marxist, but I realized that was because of me, primarily, so that's not a good example. I find it funny, regardless of, like, because we all kind of agree that the left-right thing is kind of just, like, it's kind of a psyop, like, there's, like, really, it's more of, like, it's, the left versus right thing is so you don't have the direct confrontation, which is class.
Well, and that's why, like, sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say between the proletariat and the bourgeoisie.
Yeah. I see it as, like, we've been having left-right framed as Republican-Democrat. And when you pull back the framing, you realize that was all right-wing. It was right-wing infighting the entire time. The left wing is socialism, communism. We haven't had that fight in this country yet. We haven't. Again, like, communist socialists were blacklisted from Hollywood in the 50s. Leading up to that, there were socialists and communists very much present in the 20s and 30s in this country, but they compromised with the New Deal, basically. Mm-hmm. And since then, there's been no communist, socialist, large representation in this country. And that's why we've been liberal versus Republican ever since. So I guess in my mind, there is a left versus right. We're just not arguing it honestly right now. And that's where, like, when I tell people, no, I'm leftist, and they're like, oh, you're liberal. I'm like, no, the liberals are right wing. They're not leftists. They're not even remotely. Like, we need to detach from them entirely, in my opinion. Like, they are right wing. They're capitalist, 100% capitalist. They're not leftist. They've been co-opting that for far too long. That's one of the things I'm going to try to recorrect through my channel a lot, is liberals are not left. They are not left in any capacity.
No, they never they never were. And it's frustrating for people to the left of liberals, because they're like, can you guys please get the fuck... And I know this is deliberate, obviously. This is their purpose. I'm just like, can you guys please get the fuck out of the way? Because my people are equipped to deal with the reactionary psychos. You guys are going to try and compromise with them, and they're like, you're just going to collaborate together. We have a whole history of your role. I mean, shit, without liberals, like, the whole Hitler thing wouldn't have even happened.
Yeah.
So it's like, can you guys just get out of the way and let us fight the actual fight?
Yeah.
Because I'm here for it. Everybody I know is here for it, but they're kind of like the representative of, like, as far left as you can go. And it's sickening to watch in traditional media and even movies and television, where they try and paint liberals as like, oh, they're the radical left, they're far left. I'm like, I'm sorry, but I don't think there's anything really radical about being okay with, you know, slaughtering children in the Middle East.
No, they completely dispelled this past election. Like, I've already, with friends I've talked to after the election, I feel like conversations have gotten far easier actually, because I've been open with people and I'm telling them up front, like, this election broke me. Both candidates were the same. They were literally running on the same platform, both candidates. And when I say that, I have not had one person be like, well, no. Like, everyone has been agreeing with me that, yeah, they were running on the same platform. So, like, and that leads me into, we are never voting our way out of this. Like, if that is not your takeaway from this election, wake the fuck up. Like, wake up. We are never voting our way out of this. They're just telling you up front and center, we're going to give you two candidates that look different, but they are the same. They are the same candidate, and just deal with it. Get over it, deal with it. But a third of the country still doesn't vote. So that's a third of the country that, as far as I'm concerned, is already on our side. Even if they're not communists, they agree that we're not voting our way out of this, because they've sat out multiple elections now, like 2 or 3 elections, if not more, where a third of the country didn't even vote. Like, I'd say we have the numbers. We have the numbers. We just need to stop participating in liberal versus Democrat, or Democrat versus Republican. We need to stop even bothering with elections, like, not even give them air anymore, because, like, it's just, it needs to be revolution this moment forward. In my mind, it's very much, we need a revolution in this country.
I feel like that's the only way forward. And the way, I feel like this election has really, it's activated, it did a weird thing where it activated a lot of non-voters as well. You know, I'm up here in Canada. We actually have, we just have different flavors of neoliberalism. Like, our Conservative Party is like, Ukraine needs our support, and then all of them are just different shades of neoliberalism. We have the NDP, which is kind of just like neoliberalism, but with like a couple extra goodies. Like, there's no good option, obviously.
I see Obama, or Trudeau, as your Obama, basically.
Trudeau started out as our Obama, and now he's so scuffed that I don't, like, nobody likes him. The leftists hate him. I don't think liberals like him anymore. The reactionaries they didn't always hate. Here's the thing. Trudeau started with your standard neoliberal promise. Vote me in, I'm going to fix everything. And it's like, Trudeau's story, you can't get more liberal. He ran on, basically, hey, if you vote for me, I'm going to reform electoralism. We're going to get rid of first past the post. And then we vote for him, and he's like, oh, now that I'm in power, we don't need to do that.
Funny how that happens, right? Like, Trump now saying, oh, you know, those crazy high grocery prices, there's actually nothing I can do for you. Sorry. Like, are you fucking kidding? You just won an election because of the thing you're saying is no longer an option. Like, people, and that's even where, like, I connect with even my parents, who are very much pro-Trump. Bless their hearts, but they are. It's whatever. But even them, they agree. Like, there are things in this country all of us agree on, and nothing ever changes. Nothing ever gets done. It never changes. Like, I've had that conversation with my parents now since this election. So again, I, like, even people who still are, like, believing in Trump, give them a year, give them 2 years where they see nothing has materially changed in my life. Bread is still $6. Like, what are we doing? It's just going to get worse from here. So eventually, those people will also come to our side, in my mind, or at least a good chunk of them. But I don't know. I think, like, Bernie, for us, was a populist who ran on revolution twice. Like, he ran on very populist messaging. Do you want to have a revolution in this country? And he built enormous crowds across the entire country. A third of the country doesn't even vote. Like, you can't tell me for a second that we don't have the people to do what we need to do to turn this country around. I think just not enough people can visualize it. And like, part of that is because of this thick layer of propaganda that all of us are trying to swim through. Like, it's exhausting. Even for people trying to pay attention to it, it's exhausting because you have to examine every single tiny angle to try to figure out what is actually happening in the world every day. Like, it's exhausting.
No, for sure. And it's the same story. I don't know if it's the same with you, but I have a lot of friends, a lot of family members who don't vote, and it's always the same thing. It's never like, oh, I just don't care about it. It's like, I don't think this is going to do anything for me.
Yeah, we all know it. Yeah.
It's because they've been voting their whole lives, and they've just seen their material conditions decrease slowly over time. I mean, I might have missed the part in State and Revolution where he said we can push the czars left. You know what I mean? Like, it's just, anytime there has actually been meaningful change, and I'll fight anybody on the USSR, by the way. Anybody in the chat, I will debate you on the USSR, okay? Mm-hmm. Because for all the propaganda about the USSR, they went from a largely agrarian country to a superpower in 2 fucking decades and then defeated the Nazis. I'm sorry, there's not a bigger W. Well, there's a bigger W right now, but nobody wants to talk about it because it's over there in the East, and you're all afraid of them. There's not a bigger W I have seen in history than that. You can't level up that fast. Like, you just don't get the XP, guys.
Yeah. That's where I like bringing up China to some of my, like, even libertarian friends that I have. And I'm like, they have a far better standard of living than we have currently. Like, it's not even comparable. They have pretty much solved homelessness, solved poverty. Like, they have high-speed rail. Like, high-speed rail is one of those things that, like, so pretty much everyone in this country agrees with. Like, virtually all of us would agree, like, yeah, high-speed rail would be a great investment of our money. Nope, let's just send it to Ukraine instead. Let's send it to Israel, like, to kill more people instead. Like, again, that's where even people like my parents who just voted Trump are coming around and admitting nothing changes. No matter who we vote for, there's always gridlock in Washington. There's always some excuse. This never gets done. We are progressively getting worse, and there's never an inch to the left. Not even a millimeter, like, nothing to the left. We get nothing. And, like, until there is a strong communist, socialist, even anarchist, I would combine anarchists to the left, honestly. I don't know, or center more than they are right wing, because anarchists are not right wing to me. They're not right wing, because right wing, I think, is extreme, just crony, like, laissez-faire. Whereas anarchists, most of them are like, we still want to abide by laws. Like, you can't fuck over other people. You know, I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, libertarians, I mean, I get there's, like, a huge focus on age of consent, and that's great. Do you, I guess. But with anarchists, it's like every anarchist I've met is very anti-capitalist. They just, the disagreement comes not with here's the thing. Karl Marx's end goal is a classless, stateless society. Karl Marx's end goal, you could argue, is anarchist.
Yeah.
But the way anarchists disagree is, and I have brought it up to them that Engels covered this on Authority, but that's going to make your head hurt. the disagreement is surrounded around how we get there, right?
Yeah.
Because it's like the second you're like, well, we do need the state to X, Y, and Z, they're like, whoa, whoa, whoa. And it's like, I get it. But what I try and remind my anarchist friends is I'm like, your only experience with a state is under a dictatorship of the bourgeoisie. That is your only experience. And the only other framework you have, and I try and hammer this home for people in the West, the only framework of governance you have is under a capitalist framework. That's it. The only other thing you have is input from other channels. The only other input you have is what's most likely propaganda. And now that we live in an age where there isn't propaganda, we're seeing how the state can be used for good. I mean, shit, in China, I'm not seeing any billionaires getting executed over here. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah.
Over in China, I think it's something like 70% of business is state owned. So all those people are like, China's capitalist. I'm like,
it's like 90% of homeowners. 90% home ownership rate over there. Home ownership. Like everyone's been like, in communism, you won't own anything, right? Okay, well, China, they own 90% of their homes, the people, you know.
Which is funny because under capitalism, nobody owns anything. It's like, what are we owning, guys?
Yeah, it's all been projection.
I'm renting, you're renting, your dad's renting, everybody is renting. So what are we doing?
Yeah.
But yeah, it's without further ado, I thought it'd be cool to cover a couple really cool films you've done over in Film Spectacle.
Sure.
I really liked Idiocracy because I've been calling this wretched continent Idiocracy for actually since it came out. In fact, when I watched it when it came out, I was like, this is a little too on the nose. It doesn't feel that dystopian. You guys need to try a little harder. And then I don't know about you, but that moment, I actually thought of your video. That moment with the Republican Congress when Hulk Hogan was up there, I'm like, oh no. That's like the confirmation we're an idiocracy. We can't go anywhere from here.
Yeah. No, we've fully circled back and we are here. I've always been a fan of like dystopian futures in films, and now I'm taking a step back and realizing like, oh, that's really bad now, because like there was never like a utopian like communist future that we've been like taking in over the years of like rebellion and like successful progression of society. Like it's all like dystopian, like, no, you're going to be dumb, you're going to be fat, it's going to be an authoritarian nightmare. Like every dystopian, like Hunger Games, all of it, like all of the dystopian genre has been kind of prepping us for what we are currently living in right now. It's kind of, it's crazy. There's even some movies that I haven't covered yet that they're just too on the nose. But yeah, Idiocracy was definitely one of them, where it's like our society has been dumbed down, and it's not like the easy route is to say, well, that's just how it is. People are getting dumber. People are getting more stupid. Like that's the easy thing to say here. Whereas the reality is it's been very intentional. Like, I think the next video I'm doing is going to cover a little bit of the Russian Revolution, because so much of our nation's history started at like World War I and Russian Revolution, because ever since then, it scared the shit out of the capitalists in the West that like there was going to be a populist, communist, socialist revolution in this country. And literally everything that has been done after that in Hollywood and all of it has been to prevent that from ever happening in this country. And I forgot where I was going with that, but I think that, oh yeah, idiocracy. So that ties into it, because how do you prevent revolution from happening? Well, you make them lazy, you make them dumb, you tie them to their jobs so that they never strike, you strap them into debt. You know, they have done everything they can to prevent an uprising from happening. And that's where, like, I know it's so easy to feel hopeless, because it's like, yeah, we're all chained in debt. We are all on the ground, like bloody and beaten. What are we supposed to do here? But I think that's where you mentioned Bug's life earlier as we were talking. And, you know, there is a positive outcome here where we just put aside our differences and we join together and overthrow the current system. That is possible. It's just so many of us can't visualize it, I think, because of the media we've been taking in for so many years now of this isn't possible. I mean, that's really like what the messaging has been. Get over yourselves. This is your reality. Nothing better is possible. And I think it's just damn time we say no. There is a better future possible. We just have to get through all the propaganda and I think give people something to really visualize and fight for at the end of the day. I don't know how to do that, but we do.
I definitely have some ideas. So first and foremost, what I tell people is capitalism is incompatible with the future, and that's because it absolutely is incompatible with the future. As technological advances heighten, there's going to get we're rapidly reaching a point where this doesn't make sense. You could argue it doesn't even make sense right now.
Yeah.
Once automation, AI, once we just reach a level where we don't need the amount of labor we do, we're going to have to change our game up.
Yeah.
I mean, I hate to invoke Star Trek, but like Star Trek's arguably the most realistic depiction of the future.
It's like the only utopian future we've been really given. Honestly, like I can't think of another outside of like OG Star Trek and like Next Generation. Like I can't think of another thing that really, and Orville, someone mentioned, because I tweeted about that. We're like, what other things have we seen where like a utopian, we've moved past wars, we've moved past racism, we are living a better future as a society. Like Hollywood's not producing that shit. They don't want us to visualize it. Like, again, it's a revolving door between the deep state and Hollywood. And I really think it comes down to they are what we take in to visualize not just our present, but also our past and our future. And that's their role to play. And it has been very intentional to not give us optimism towards the future, I think. In a lot of Hollywood, like even like I covered Matrix, because Matrix to me is one of the most baffling trajectories that like a series went, because like the first one is a perfect movie in every sense. It sets up Neo at the end and he's like, I'm gonna overthrow all the machines, and then he never does. You have 3 more films and he never overthrows the machines that you find out in the first film enslaved all of the masses. And to me, like that's just the biggest ball dropped ever. And like storytelling wise, it just doesn't make any sense. Like what you set up in the first film never came through fruition, and that just doesn't make sense to me. And when things don't make sense, I have to start entertaining the thought that it's intentional. So again, that's where it's like, well, where do you go from the first film? Naturally, is Neo is going to band with his comrades and he's going to defeat the machines enslaving the masses. But the studio clearly didn't want that. And that's what the 3 films we got instead was the Wachowskis trying to toe the line between the studio and all the producers who were like, no, you can't overthrow the machines, okay? I don't know. That's how I think it played out, because I'm like, it doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense. Like, where's the revolutionary content right now? Where is it? Hollywood isn't greenlighting it. The music industry isn't greenlighting it. It's just not being made at all. Like, because they don't want us visualizing it. They don't want us visualizing a better future. They want us accepting we will own nothing and be happy.
Be happy. There it is.
I'm
not gonna lie, when the World Economic Forum came out with that, I was like, is this a psyop? What are you guys doing? This is either very bold, or something that cooks up in the back of my head with the WEF at least is like, is this just supposed to like trigger like reactionary energy? Because like if we're painting this picture of like this scary dystopian, like eat the bugs, live in the pod sort of future, is that just meant to make you cling to the awful reality we have right now? Is that the purpose, or do you guys actually want to do this? We know you do. I covered it on.
I think they do. I
covered it. Yeah, I covered it on the Maple Files, where like, you know, they talk about stakeholder capitalism in a more. They're trying to sell as like a more ethical capitalism, which is a hilarious oxymoron.
Right.
But essentially, it breaks down to just the merger of corporations and state. And I was like, wait, there's already a word for this.
Mm-hmm.
There's a very famous word for this.
Yeah.
So I think, yeah, that makes a lot of sense though with the Matrix, because like that threw me too. At least at the very end, where it's like, wait, Neo lost. Mm-hmm. The machines are still dominating the world.
Yeah, he made a compromise. Yeah.
We compromised with the machines.
Yeah, he sure did.
That's the most liberal thing I have ever heard of in my life.
Awful. I hate the 3 other Matrix. Well, actually, I never saw the 4th because I just hated the 2nd and 3rd one so much. I still haven't gotten around to watching the 4th. But I know he still doesn't overthrow the machines in the end, so I just didn't feel like watching the 4th movie to know it still wasn't going to end where you literally set it up for in the first film. Like, you set it up. There's something as set up, payoff. It's a very tried and true method of storytelling, joke telling, all of it. It's tried and true. They set up Neo to overthrow the machines. He never does. So yeah, it's very frustrating. That's one of the ones that stuck with me over the years, where it's like, this could have gone so many different directions, and it could have been such a wonderful, like, underdog story. But again, that's where I'm opening my mind to, you know, to make these movies, you need funding. Where does the funding come from? It comes from the people who have the money. Do they really want revolutionary messages? No. I mean, again, that's why the Red Scare happened, and they blacklisted communists and socialists from Hollywood, like screenwriters, directors, actors, anyone who had communist sympathies was literally blacklisted. Like, and that's where even me, I've come a long way in accepting, like, I don't want to work in Hollywood anymore at all. Like, that was a dream I once had, and now it's like, you guys all just like love American empire and you love genocide apparently, and like, I don't want to rub elbows with any of you ever, like, just for the sake of telling stories that make people happy. Like, it's no longer a dream of mine.
Yeah, and I think that's entirely fair, but the cool thing about the time we're living in now is you can kind of like make your own Hollywood, at least for the time being, until the drones shoot us in the head for, you know, posting a conspiracy theory that's just going to become a fucking reality in 6 months. But right now, at least, I mean, you can make your own films, you can go independent.
Mhm.
There's just a lot, at least for me, I find there's a lot more options than back in the day where it's
Oh, for
like
sure.
you had to hope that you could get a deal on a 5D and,
Mhm.
get some
It's
people off.
definitely gotten way easier for independent filmmakers for sure. Like I've done a lot of in the last 10 years, my husband and I have worked in like local videography. So, you know, it is totally possible to produce your own film, but at the end of the day, there's still a huge time commitment.
Mhm.
So, as much as it is like, okay, I'm just going to shoot this film on my camera. Okay, you need actors, you need a crew, you need people who are like, yeah, I can come out and shoot your film for 2 weeks or longer. 2 weeks
Mhm.
being super generous, but huge time commitment there. And then you have to think about paying people for that time. So that's where the dollars end up being spent is primarily on labor. Um, which again, that's why it's like when this AI conversation is being started, it's so easy for me who I've worked on like producing and done budgets and whatnot. And it's like labor cost is a huge section of your production budget. It's a huge chunk. And of course, the capitalists want to shrink that down as much as humanly possible
Of
because
course.
then it helps their back end. Like it's not like they're going to spend less on movies. They're just going to pay their actors more because they're the bourgeois, and they're going to pay their producers and directors more because they're also the bourgeois. Like the people they're paying the most on Hollywood productions are, as we've seen, people who are too cowardly and morally bankrupt to call out genocide. Like they side with the powerful because they're in that extra tax bracket. They've made their way doing acting, whatever, singing, whatever, based off of their talents for sure. But like, I don't know. It's all very intentional to me. Like all of it is very intentional.
No, for sure. For sure. Anyway, without further ado, I've been too enamored with this conversation, but I did promise you guys a watch party. I didn't forget, even though it's been 40 minutes. So we're gonna check
Sorry.
out. No, it's my fault. It's absolutely my fault. This is my show. I should be more in control of it than just yakking.
No, I
Uh,
also ramble. I'm sorry.
well,
This is why I
rambling
have to be very
hours.
intentional with my like essays at this point because I'm like I really need to be like concise and I need to write things and think things out because otherwise I just ramble a lot.
The cool thing about getting to your late 30s is you give up on that entirely and then you're just like, fuck it, whatever. I'll just do this and we'll see how it works. But anyway, we're going to check out Film Spectacle's Idiocracy. And if at any point you want to make some commentary or anything, just let me know and I'll
Okay.
pause it because I can click that. But yeah, this is, God, this is so good. I'm excited. You guys are going to love this.
Hello, folks, and welcome to Film Spectacle, where I talk both movies and politics. Now, this movie is brought up quite a bit these days, and for very good reason. Some say that, like The Simpsons, Mike Judge predicted the future with his 2006 film Idiocracy. The hyper-commercialization, Americans living solely on butter and energy drinks, the merger of corporations and the state, a celebrity president, and as the name suggests, a nation full of idiots. But before we get too far into it, if you clicked on this video hoping to hear a rant about how all of our societal woes stem from Trump or social media, you have come to the wrong channel. Because in order to understand why we're living in a real-life version of this film, you have to understand that no, it does not all boil down to that one former and most likely future reality show
Called it.
president or these damn kids and their smartphones.
Really?
So how did we get here? Come along and let's get into it. Idiocracy stars Luke Wilson, Maya Rudolph, Dax Shepard, and Terry Crews. It's directed by Mike Judge, who you may know from Beavis and Butthead, King of the Hill, and one of my favorites, Office Space. Luke Wilson plays Joe, a U.S. Army librarian who is unremarkable and average in every way. And Maya Rudolph is Rita, a prostitute fresh off the streets. Both are brought in to be a part of a hibernation experiment for 1 year, but after a scandal with one of the top brass, the experiment is shut down, and Joe and Rita are forgotten about for 500 years. So finally, their hibernation chambers are unearthed, and Joe and Rita find themselves in the year 2505. The people have become mostly monosyllabic and illiterate, buildings and roads are crumbling, and nearly everything is covered in advertisements and corporate branding. And after going in and out of the hospital,
It's
and then
crazy
in
how
and out
well
of the
this movie
court
has
for not
aged.
paying the hospital bill, Joe takes
Like
an
the
IQ
ultimate
test,
agent.
and it turns
Yeah.
out he is now the smartest man in the country. So the president himself asks Joe to be his secretary of the interior to solve their food supply problems. But being the smartest person surrounded by utter idiots isn't easy, and Joe has to fight for his life just to help solve their problems. But in the end, our average Joe and Rita save the day and live happily ever after, though still surrounded by idiots. As funny as the premise is that our nation's decline is primarily because the smarter, more affluent, professional managerial class stops breeding, whereas the dumb poors breed like rabbits, we can go ahead and say that that's not what's happened in real life. So how did we get here? I want to explore two key systemic issues today, which may not be the only reasons for our intellectual decline, but they are certainly big societal factors. The first issue we need to look deeper into is the massive and successful effort to defund our public schools all across the country and to privatize our education system instead. But first, let's look at some numbers. The Organization of Economic Cooperation and Development, or the OECD, produces a detailed report on the top performing education systems in the world. This report may not be mentioned much in Western media, but the megalomaniacs at the WEF and the leaders of the G7 are definitely paying attention to it, so you should too. The OECD conducts a PISA test every few years, a worldwide assessment of 15-year-olds in math, reading, and science. Since the founding of this assessment in 2000, the US scores have remained fairly stagnant, not declining, but not improving much either. Whereas countries like China, Singapore, Ireland, South Korea, and Japan are consistently outranking us, even taking the pandemic into consideration in their latest findings. And as recent as the 2022 PISA, the United States ranked 9th in reading, 16th in science, and 34th in math. So here's where we need to accept the reality that our model of defunding public education, something that's been going on for 3 decades now, and moving towards a privatized system is clearly not working. And the proof really is in the OECD pudding. But to provide a little more context, Lyndon B. Johnson signed the Elementary and Secondary Education Act in 1965, federally covering K-12 public schools, while still coexisting with privately owned and funded schools across the country. Then, 27 years later, the first private charter school opened in 1992 in Minnesota, and it relied on private tuition, grants, and donations to operate. Charter schools started gaining some traction within the state, but it wasn't until Bill Clinton came along and passed the Improving America's Schools Act in 1994, which allowed these little
I'm gonna
private
need more
charter
people to hate
schools
on
to
Bill
receive
Clinton
government funding,
going
just like our
forward.
public schools.
He did.
Sorry.
I'm just like, Bill Clinton did so much damage to this country. Like,
Yeah,
I'm gonna
and
need some
there's
people to hate on him more often.
oh my God, like first off, he turned the Democratic Party into the Republican Party. That's literally what he did. Like he
Yep.
turned
Yeah. He deregulated like the FCC. He's the reason we have 6 media companies now. Him, like he's the reason. And defunding our public schools, like it all, so much goes back. And like NAFTA and the crime bill happened under Clinton. Like it's just so much. And it's like people will say, just like how they say with Obama, is like Obama, his only scandal was a tan suit. Okay, well, Bill Clinton, they're still running with his only scandal was a blowjob. We need to get over that. Like he has so much scandal beyond the one, thing that he's known for.
The problem, and this is how these people can get away with this shit, is the problem is it's not direct. It's not a one-to-one.
Yeah.
There's a cause and there's a couple steps and then there's an effect. And so you can't trace it back to the person, if that makes sense. The damage he did just for like his behavior with the Democratic Party in general can be felt to this day.
Mm-hmm.
Because he's one of the like prime operators as to why it's become this corporate like blob.
Money making.
Yeah, it's he turned it into a fucking grift. Bad Cookies agreed, Himbo. He turned the Democrats into 80s Reaganite Republicans. Absolutely. And still, most liberals I know look back at him with rose-colored glasses, and they're like, but the economy was so good under him. I'm like, bro, the fucking internet happened under his watch.
Yeah.
You have to be intentionally trying to delete economy.exe to not, like, take a W on that.
Yeah.
Like, oh my god. But yeah, Clinton fucking sucked. He was ass.
Yeah.
And I'm pretty sure he's a lizard. And I'm pretty sure Hillary Clinton's a lich. You'll hear it from me first, but I think she has a phylactery somewhere. If we can find it, I think. Here's the thing: if there was a game of American Revolution, Hillary Clinton is absolutely the last boss.
Oh, yeah, up there.
Klaus Schwab's like the mini boss, but like Hillary Clinton, she like transforms into like Mephistopheles or some
is she the top boss? I don't know. I'm trying to think who would be potentially the bigger boss, because there's probably another boss up there that we aren't seeing, that we aren't even aware of yet, probably.
Yeah, you know what I'm terrified about? Like, what if there's an ultimate capitalist that we don't even know about? Like,
I mean, I wouldn't think
Elon, what if
that's
Elon
really
has
possible.
a boss? What if Elon Musk has a boss and we're not told about him? Because really, like, where do we get these net worths and all of these like statistics from? We're just getting it from sources that are entirely backed by capital. There could be there could be like quadrillionaires and we're not aware of it, just because they know if we were aware of it, we would just immediately overthrow them.
I mean, that's the thing. They like operating in secrecy. Like, that's why we're now seeing CEOs take their names down online, because they don't want us to know who they are. Like, it's crazy.
It most certainly is. But yeah, we'll continue.
And from that point on, the number of charter schools has grown exponentially. But the question is, if these schools are private, aka a free market solution to our public option, then why in the world are our public funds going into them? Even the free voucher programs that you see are state funded. A Google search into the budget of my state, and as of 2024, charter schools now receive nearly the same percentage of our state education tax dollars as our public schools do. These charter schools are sold to you as freedom of school choice to parents nationwide, but really it's freedom for capitalists to profit off our children's education while also leeching off our tax dollars and underpaying their teachers in the process. And now we're actively seeing the reframing of private charter schools being rebranded as public charter schools by the media and politicians. But don't be fooled. Most of these are for-profit businesses receiving our education tax dollars and funneling it into private interests. Our public education system has been hijacked by capitalists, all done with bipartisan support back in 1994, over a decade before Idiocracy came out, which might be why Judge was already noticing societal decline enough to comment on it with this 2006 film. So if we want to change course in our country and steer away from this Idiocracy path that we're headed straight towards, where people need pictures to read, can barely talk beyond basic words, and have zero critical thinking skills, and if we want our educational system to compete with the quality of other systems around the world, then we need to not chalk stupidity up to bad genes. And it's not the fault of the teachers across the country who are all underpaid and overworked. And really, it's not the fault of these private charter schools either. The problem is how they're getting funded. We need to reroute our tax dollars from going into these private for-profit charter schools and to invest it back into our public school system like we used to do in this country, and like the countries around the world with better educational systems do. But it's not all about our public schools. We need to talk about our poisoned water supply. And while we might not be using Brondo as a water substitute for our crops, our drinking water all across the nation is in dire need of attention. Flint, Michigan has been without safe drinking water since 2014, when Governor Rick Snyder cut corners and exposed over 100,000 residents, 12,000 of which were children, to unsafe levels of lead in their water. This led to skin rashes, seizures, hair loss, lead poisoning, and Legionnaire's exposure that killed at least 115 people. Here we are, a decade later, and residents of Flint still don't have clean water, and many of their children now deal with medical issues and, what do you know, learning difficulties. The global health community overwhelmingly agrees there's no safe level of lead to ingest, and drinking lead-contaminated water is especially dangerous to children, babies, and fetuses. And even low exposure of lead in children can interfere with brain development, causing lower IQs, learning disabilities, hyperactivity, and inability to concentrate. And you think our lead problem is just isolated to Flint? A recent assessment by the EPA concluded an estimated total of 9 to 12 million lead pipes serviced homes throughout America, which is around 10% of our national service line infrastructure. And while the press and politicians are celebrating the recently announced bipartisan lead pipe and paint action plan that is set to replace up to 1.7 million lead pipes around the country, if my poor American math skills serve me correctly, that's anywhere from 7.3 to 10.3 million lead pipes around the country that will still be left untouched and full of lead. So just as our country took action in the 70s to ban the use of lead paint in residences and buildings because it was linked to developmental delays and intellectual disabilities, among other health problems, we need to treat our lead pipes as the severe infrastructure and health crisis that it truly is. The Biden-Harris plan offers an inadequate $3 billion to fix some of the lead pipes poisoning select communities, but it would take only $45 billion, a fraction of our annual military budget, to solve this water crisis altogether. So now we have to get to an uncomfortable and difficult thought. Our government sees these regular OECD reports of our school system getting outpaced by other countries, and it acknowledges lead is a health hazard that leads to intellectual difficulties, and that at least 10% of our water infrastructure contains lead, yet no action is actually being taken to change course to correct either systemic issue. The answer may hurt, but it's simple. It's because authoritarian regimes want a dumbed-down population. This is entirely intentional. And I think I'll be doing a separate video all about authoritarianism in film, because this is getting a little long, and that is a beast of a conversation of its own. But we are living under authoritarian control already. And even though we're not to state-issued barcode tattoos on our wrists yet, it's hard not to come to the conclusion that the powers that be want to keep us dumb. Because a smart, critical thinking population is the biggest enemy of a ruling authoritarian class. So how did we get here? We have been barreling towards this idiocracy timeline since the mid-90s, when Bill Clinton and everyone else in our government sold out our public school system to the capitalist class. And we've had a lead water crisis on our hands that probably existed long before it was discovered in Flint in 2014 that no one seems to care about fixing. And are there other factors at play here? For sure. Social media, our dumbed-down mainstream media, and screen time each have an effect. Vaccines may be linked, and our food supply is being injected and sprayed with all kinds of hormones, pesticides, and chemical additives. But what isn't happening? Our children aren't failing or just being born stupid. Rather, our government is failing our kids. But blaming the government can only get us so far when it's our complacency that's allowing them to get away with it still. It's up to us to come together and change directions, creating the future that we want for ourselves and our children. And if we really don't want to end up like a real idiocracy, then we have to start by acknowledging and addressing these two foundational issues in our society first: our gutted and decaying public school system and our poisoned water supply, and that ultimately our bought-off politicians will never change course until we come together and start demanding it. But in the end, Idiocracy is a fantastic film that hilariously and eerily predicts America's path to pure regression. And I have so much more I could talk about, but I think I'll leave it there for now. Thanks for watching and listening. Like and subscribe if you're enjoying things over here, and stay tuned for next time.
So that was dope. I hope you guys enjoyed it. You can just go to YouTube, type in Film Spectacle, and subscribe. Please do. Yeah, that was I love how you make it about a movie, but you inject things that people need to know that they can apply the movie to like their actual material situation, like right there immediately. That's really smart. No, that was the first video that super drew me to it, where I'm like, oh my God, people need to watch this. And then at the end, you're like, to prevent idiocracy. And then it was crazy because in real time, since this video was made, we kind of just got there. So
we're getting there. I mean, we are coming. I think we are in the age. I very much, especially when I'm writing my next video that I'm hoping to be up this month, if at all possible. But it very much goes back a century ago. This is a long time coming. We are living in a time where, I know politicians like to run on existential battles, but this really is the existential battle of our lifetime. Is we are on the train towards a really scary future. We have to do something about it right now. We have to. And it is time. The left has been dormant in this country for far too long. We have to rise up and do something. And not just the left, but it's going to have to come primarily from the left. It's on us to recruit as many people to our cause as humanly possible. Because it's just again, this is a long time coming. It goes back so far in our nation's history. We had communists and socialists in this country fighting for change regularly in this country at a time. And that's been taken from us. The closest thing we got was Bernie, who then bent the knee towards the same capitalists. That's the best they gave us. We have to ditch politicians altogether. I've already resigned. I'm never going to vote for a politician again, probably. I'm never going to endorse one for sure, because what does my endorsement do other than get you a seat? And then you have no accountability for me from that point on. We've talked about, the accountability ends as soon as they get elected. So we just have to ditch the system. It's not working. We have to transcend. We have to create a better future for our children and our grandchildren and all of us. So
yeah, I've always kind of said there's only one way out of this, and that's direct action. And I think we all kind of know that intrinsically. And I think the problem a lot of people have is that it's kind of scary. And I get that it's kind of scary. I empathize with that. I'm not sitting here saying no, there's nothing you should be concerned about, because it is definitely scary. But as I've said a million times before, there's places we can start.
yeah.
And one of the places we can start, and leftists and liberals and all them hate me when I make this reference, but there was one direct action event that produced what it intended to achieve. And that was up here in Canada. That was a trucker convoy.
Mm-hmm.
I know a lot of people don't like hearing that, but I use it.
Great. Yeah.
I use it as an example of successful organizing. A lot of people don't like it because it was like vaccine mandates and they were truckers. They weren't truly workers and all these like little I love Pfizer and Fauci or whatever. But listen, at the end of the day, it's like we had a goal, we organized, we disrupted capital, we achieved the goal. Because I will say right up here, as someone who lives in Canada, they did achieve the goal. Okay, the second they started disrupting capital,
yeah,
our whole government rolled all of those mandates back super quick, to the point where our media had to make a disclaimer. Mandates are ending, and they put in parentheses, but not because of the truckers. And it's like, you have to put that in parentheses. You're taking the L. Like, you got to hold the L at that point.
Yeah.
But it's like direct action is really the only way we're getting out of this. And the revolutionary optimism I hold and I try to pass on to other people is that like there are so many opportunities for this. Like we're looking at the current events with Luigi, who is the shooter. Yes, I'm using that guy. Sorry. We'll get into that. But like people need to understand the bourgeoisie doesn't even need a general strike. They just need a threat of class consciousness. I will die on this hill. They just need to know that there is a body that is so organized and so willing to push back that it is going to stand in the way of their prime aims. All they need is the threat of it.
Yeah.
But what we need there is class consciousness. What we need there is for a bunch of people, and we saw it with this whole CEO shooter thing. Go look up the right wingers like losing their minds and like licking the CEO's boot and talking about it being a hero.
Yeah.
And the comments section were just filled with people being like, no, this is a terrible take. This is like these healthcare insurance companies are awful. They've ruined my life. All we need is people to get together and break out of this stupid thing and focus on their material conditions.
Yeah.
And it's not hard. It's really not hard, guys. I promise. At the end of the day, your neighbor, regardless of how he votes or what like his media diet is, chances are if he does sell his labor as a means of subsistence for himself, you already have more things in common with him than he does with anything else in this world. It's the same struggle. The price of everything is going up. Your wages aren't rising to meet that.
Yeah.
Everybody's in debt. Everybody I know is in debt. I'm in debt, for fuck's sake. I'll call myself out. I don't care.
Oh, same. Yeah. We're all, it's all by design though. And that's where like we have to call their bluff at this point because they're telling us, well, and that's just where like the doomsdayers I think come in because you bring up general strike or direct action, and there's always, well, what about this and what about that? And the what about is, I don't know, it bothers me because I understand though, because it's like they're drilling it into you. If you collectively get together and if you strike, you're going to get thrown out of your house. You're going to lose everything. Like they're drilling that messaging into us hard, right?
Mm-hmm.
But in my mind, okay, are they going to evict everyone? They're going to send out the goon squads and evict all of us? We're all going to lose our job? Like if we all go on strike? I've worked in a restaurant before. If everyone didn't show up to the job, I think the restaurant would probably just close for the day. Like, I don't know, they'd probably get through it. Maybe my manager would just like, he wouldn't fire us. Like, he wouldn't fire the whole crew, because then it's like, you're going to have to retrain an entire staff. Do you know how much like training costs are, and like getting people, like the hiring process, how exhausting that can be? Like, again, call their bluff. Like, no, they're not going to fire all of you. They're not going to kick all of you out of our houses. And this is where what I'm seeing not on the ground. I'm an hour away from Western North Carolina, but that's where my home is. But there's some really incredible direct action, like mutual aid happening action in that region right now, where people with like land, private landowners, are inviting people who no longer have a place to live to come camp on their property. Bring your RV, they're doing mutual aid to collect heaters and insulated tents and stuff, and food and water. They're setting up encampments to compensate for the failures of our government. So again, it's like their bluff is, this is all going to happen if you do this. And I think it's just to talk us out of it. At the end of the day, they're just saying all this shit so that we never do anything. And that's where I think we just have to come together and do what I'm saying is the biggest trust fall we've ever done as a human species, where we just say enough is enough, and we don't go to work, and we stop paying our bills, and we just hold the fucking line. Because yeah, I think they would come to terms with our demands pretty fast, honestly. I think if we collectively came together, you know, they'd have to, because otherwise, how do capitalists make money if we're not working? You know, are they going to automate all our jobs? Like, okay, but they're already talking about automating our jobs, even if we don't strike. So I don't know. It's like, we really have no other option, I think, than withholding our labor, like across the scale, withholding everything. Like, stop buying shit, even if it's for a day or two to start. I think once we get started, it will just keep building and building and building, because it's so populist. Like, what we are running on is very popular, I think. Like, yeah, we don't want you being chained to debt. This isn't a healthy way to live as a society. I don't want anyone working more than 40 hours a week to barely survive. I don't want anyone working, period, to barely survive in this country.
No. And the thing is, this is the beauty of it. And this guy with a beard once talked about this, something dialectical. I'm not very familiar. But they don't just need our labor. They need our purchasing too. That's the inherent contradiction of the capitalist system. You have a pool of people that you are incentivized to pay as little as possible, but you also depend on that same pool of people. This is how I've radicalized right-wingers. You depend on that pool of people to purchase your goods and services. It is the literal definition of shitting where you eat.
Yeah.
It is actually brain dead. And that's how you break through to people, when you point out the absurdity of the system that they've been propagandized into supporting. It's like,
yeah,
wait, so they pay us as little as possible, but then they need us to buy their shit.
Yeah.
That doesn't make any sense. And it's like, no shit. That's where the credit system came in. Thank you, Professor Wolf. He was the first one to point that out. And he's an economist. I'm not. He's probably much smarter than me in that regard. But that's something that was kind of a wake-up call to me as well, where he was like, where do you think credit came from?
Yeah.
It's because of capitalism. It's because your purchasing power just kept diminishing. And then you just weren't able to make any big purchases anymore.
Yeah.
And he was like, why do you think everything has a payment plan now? And I'm like, shit. Because everything does have a payment plan now. Even fast food has a payment plan now.
I know, isn't that crazy? Yeah.
It's like, bro, we're so down bad that we can't afford like an extra large from Little Caesars, or I don't know if you guys have Little Caesars in.
Yeah, we do. Yeah.
Yeah, like fast food. Have we gotten to that level?
That's where someone said, like, what do you expect, not to purchase food? Like, obviously, yeah, you need to eat during this general strike, but I've also gone a week in or two in between shopping and find a way to stretch out the pantry. You think Depression era, like they stretched out everything. Like, yeah, I think we're going to have to make some sacrifices, each of us. And I think going forward, everyone needs to think of what role they can play going forward in helping the revolution. Whatever role you want to play, just pick one. And, if you're the type that wants to stock up on some pantry items that you can then take out to your community, then that's the role you play. If you want to do a different role and join a militia, I don't know. I think like we're going to need serious conversations going forward about how we execute things going forward. But we all have a role to play in this at the end of the day. And
I volunteered to be the muscle.
Yeah, we're gonna need a militia. I mean, it's in our constitution. I don't know if it's part of Canadian constitution, the right to a militia, but we for sure need one in this country. Like, I'm from the South. I'm in the South. It's people like will reenact like the Civil War in my area. So, people are all about their guns. They're all about militias in theory already. And I don't know, I think going forward, there's a lot of stuff we need to talk about, I guess, but.
Wouldn't it be crazy if there was an active plan to manipulate all of the gun owners to go along with like all the dystopian plans everybody has with a certain populace? No, that would never happen. This is a very Whitney Webb friendly audience, so they probably get what I'm throwing. But yeah,
yeah.
No, I looked up the Canadian.
Sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say I looked up the Canadian Constitution, and it's just a piece of paper that says LOL on it. So I don't know how to take that.
I mean, ours is just being used as toilet paper right now by our entire Congress. So. I know.
Well, that's what I don't get about the American Constitution. I thought it was rock solid, and it seemed like that a lot with a lot of the like litigation that happened during the pandemic, because they were forced to kind of like not do certain things, like they had to kind of walk back some of the mandate stuff and some other stuff. But then it's like, okay, well, the First Amendment is that's like free speech, right?
Yeah, we don't have that.
So the problem with that is that like that doesn't apply to. It's kind of clever how they've done this.
They've privatized free speech.
Yeah, exactly. Thank you.
Yes.
You completely summarized it.
Yeah.
Free speech is privatized. So right off the bat, your amendment rights are being violated, but it's being done under a loophole. So really, you can't really complain about it.
Yeah. Yeah. But even in theory, it's like, okay, if I go stand on a soapbox in my town square, supposedly that should be in my rights. But if you're saying the wrong thing, though, you're going to get cops come up on you and, you're probably going to be thrown off your soapbox. So I don't know. And yeah, it's been privatized because it's like, I don't think any of us have free speech if you're in fear of losing your job if you say the wrong thing on your social media. Like, I understand if you say like, fuck off to a customer, like, yeah, you should probably lose your job for that. But like, people are getting fired from their jobs for outside of the job content or conduct and things that they're saying outside of the job. And it's like, this is authoritarian as fuck to me. Like, that's very authoritarian. And yeah, it's like, how can any of us say that we have a right to free speech at this point? Because to me, I don't feel like I can say everything I want to say on a daily basis, because the surveillance state is watching. I don't know. There's
I
a lot
mean,
going on.
I mean, the thing is, like, we gotta pull our punches just like doing anything on YouTube.
Yeah.
I mean, it's gotten to the point where, like, I have to literally avoid saying certain things
Yeah.
on a platform. And this is largely because it isn't nationalized. We don't have any, like, town square that is just, like, completely neutral. It is
Yeah.
always under the interests of capital or the interests of government, which is just also under the interests of capital. It's like I've had to literally, like, avoid covering certain topics.
Yeah.
For
There's even a
content
couple
I-
films that I'm like cautious about covering. Have you heard of the movie Exodus by chance?
I have not, but that's a really awesome game I'm looking forward to.
No, Exodus, I'm thinking, I mean, it's one of those ones, it's like if I ever cover it on my channel, I'm like, this might get me in trouble, because it is a Hollywood epic from either late 50s or early 60s, I want to say, but it's all about the founding of Israel. From like a Kirk Douglas, I'm pretty sure, is the main lead in it. And so it's very much his standpoint. Anyway, it's a crazy movie. Yeah, there's a lot of ones that I'm like, I don't know if I can cover this properly on my channel without some sort of repercussion. I don't know. I'm still a new channel, so I haven't had to deal with a lot of the back and forth yet, but
so the big ones that are like a pain in the ass is like any election denial stuff, COVID stuff. YouTube still gets triggered as hell over.
Yul Brynner too. Yeah, Yul Brynner.
Yeah, Yul Brynner. Let's see. We haven't gotten to the point yet where like communism is like just like you they delete your channel, but I feel like we're close.
What they're passing now with the teaching our children
the dangers
anti-communism in our public schools, like they're not trying to raise public school teacher salaries, mind you. They're not trying to maybe write something where our public school dollars have to pay for school supplies. They're not doing that for our public schools. But what they will do is to make sure to teach our kids about the dangers of communism. Yep.
Yeah, I've always found it really funny that they're doing all of this, like, while China is just right over, like, right over there.
Yeah, but people don't know. Like, so many people I talk to about China, and they rattle off just State Department. Goodness,
so
even
much,
my mom is
so much coke.
Yeah.
And it's like, for me, it's really funny because, like, the majority of them are so easily debunkable, where it's like, oh, well, they're, like, this goes for anti-communism in general. Like, it's not hard to argue against it. You just have to point to any Western country and they're doing what they're accusing, because that's the main propaganda tool of fascism. It always has been. You just call your enemy out for what you're doing.
Oh yeah. I mean, we're seeing Israel do that daily. Mm-hmm. That is Israel Zionist playbook, like 100%. And that's where it bleeds into US is the same way. Anything they want to project onto us, they do.
Yep.
It's a dirty game that they're playing. Like,
but like with China, it's like, oh, they're authoritarian. they have a
Mhm.
social credit score, and it's like we do. It's just completely based on whether or not you're poor.
Yeah.
Done. And then it's like, what else you got? Well, they're actually capitalist, and it's like, well, it's working better than it's working here. Because I just steel man them on the whole like China's capitalist thing. Great,
Yeah.
let's pretend they are. They're windmill dunking on every single Western country
Yeah.
by a wide margin.
Yeah.
So why don't we adopt their style of capitalism?
Yeah.
And then I find a lot of people, they'll like revert back to like, well, no, China's communist. Like, this is my favorite thing about China. It's communist or capitalist, depending on what point you're trying to make.
Yeah.
It's hilarious.
Yeah.
It's like, it's communist, like if I'm trying to make this point, and it's capitalist, I'm trying to like it. Oh, it's so good.
Yeah.
So
what
good.
what did it for me is there's a whole niche of YouTube videos where you can just search like 4K walking tours, and like it scratches the itch if you're poor and can't travel. So like I went for a while, I was just watching like, I want to go to Prague today, and I would like search like walking tours in Prague and walk around, watch someone vicariously walk around a city for a while. Anyway, do that with China. Do that with Russia, because the videos are out there. They're on YouTube, free to watch. And a big one for China especially is you'll watch it and you'll be walking through and you'll realize this city looks actually pretty American. Outside of it being super clean and no homeless people, but like the businesses itself, you'll see a McDonald's, you'll see Apple, you'll see all of corporate America in China. The same people who want to fearmonger you about how horrible and authoritarian and awful communist China is, they've set up fucking shop in China. Like these corporations exist in these places that they're actively telling you is a nightmare authoritarian communist country. Okay, so which is it? So I don't know. That was like, especially watching China, where it's like, wow, there's a lot of ones. There's so many different stores and like corporations that you'll recognize, and it's like, this is China. It's not. It doesn't look like a nightmare. It looks like what America should look like at this day and age. It's clean. There's no homeless people. It has high-speed rail. They've figured it out. They have figured it out. And like a big thing with, especially even going back to Bernie, I remember talking to people like libertarian friends and whatnot about, and they would always bring up, well, we're so much bigger of a country. Like we can't do what Bernie wants to do because, that's Norway. That's what they're doing in Europe. We're a way bigger country. There's no way we can copy paste it. Okay, well, that argument doesn't hold when we compare to China, because they are just as populated, actually more populated than we are, and they have no homeless people. We have 650,000 homeless people every single night on the streets in our country, and we have less people. We have more people in our jails than China does, but you want me to think they're authoritarian? Like something doesn't track. We're like, we have the world's largest prison in population. You can't sell me on someone is more authoritarian than the United States, like outside of Israel and what they're doing. Like we are very authoritarian. We just call it something else because it's hidden. It's not as obvious, and we have a propaganda machine that inverts it and twists it and convinces us otherwise. But we are a deeply authoritarian country here, deeply fascist. We've been fascist for a long time.
Yep. I mean, shit. We just had all of the richest people in the world donate to Donald Trump's inauguration fund.
Yeah.
Like, I don't, at this point, like we've been doing the whole like corporations in bed with the government thing for a hot minute, but at this point they're not even pretending there's a difference. At this point they're just like, I'm just gonna let it hang out. I'm just gonna
Yeah.
just gonna drop. So I mean, yeah. And I mean, the big thing with China that is the difference, in my opinion, is that in Western countries, definitely up here in Canada, definitely in the States, definitely in a lot of Europe, the government answers to corporations. In China, that role is reversed.
Yeah.
Corporations have to answer to the government. If you're fucking around, you're gonna find out.
Yeah.
It's just over here, they just fuck around and there's no finding out.
No.
Everybody else finds out.
And
They
then
don't
we
find
cheer
out.
on deregulation more and more. Like, that's the
Yeah.
part that gets me, is like, you're complaining about even like people on the right now under RFK and all this make America healthy again. Like, okay, you're admitting then that there are a lot of problems in our food supply and water supply, but then your answer is less
Deregulation.
regulation. Like,
Yep. That's a psyop. And I gotta hand it to him.
oh, it was brilliant. Having Tulsi and RFK, I could have never in a million years predicted that shit. I never would have predicted
that
it.
was better than Bernie. They sheepdogged everybody. And this was from like people who are deeply critical of Trump before. They sheepdogged everybody back into the machine by saying like, oh, we're gonna fix health, and like we're gonna all the things that people deeply care about, especially anything that comes to health, because people have a fear of mortality. That's the ultimate like manipulation tool. They siphoned all of that energy back into the machine, because now RFK is part of the machine, and now he's going to make America healthy again by deregulating absolutely everything. So corporations essentially just turn America into fucking feudalism, and that's the plan, people.
I know, and we see how it plays out in other countries. That's why, like, even these same people on the right are celebrating what's going on in now Argentina and Syria now. I mean, like, Syria is now being sold off to all the bidders. Congratulations. Democracy won, everyone. Like, it's being sold off and privatized. Like, that is their democracy, according to the rich, is less government and more privatization. BlackRock, coming in to save the day. It's and like this BlackRock and all this shit is so integrated in AI and other things that are also headed, and it's scary. Like, this future that they are openly telling us they want for us at this point. Like, they're really not even hiding it. They really are telling us, like, you're gonna own nothing, you're gonna be happy, you're gonna eat bugs, it's totally normal to live in a surveillance state. Like, all this shit has been so normalized. It's now normalized to watch genocide every day on our phones. They just they're getting more and more depraved every single day. And like, it's, as you said, it's unsustainable. We cannot keep going down this route. Otherwise, like, that's a future I don't want to live in personally. I would rather try to do something about it now than live in a future that the ruling class is telling me they want for us at this point.
Well, I think the purpose of all this on some level is to prevent any avenues of revolt from happening, because once they have us fully locked down in a surveillance state, in they've got digital ID, like everything on you is tracked, and they have the power of the state to punish for any thought that is wrong, any action that is wrong. It'd be crazy if they had like a large event that they use this for all of a test run for, but no, that definitely isn't something that happened in the last
not at all.
4 years.
I know, that's why, like, so much of this seems like it is culminating. Like, yeah, we have been I mean, I guess we can say COVID was a really big starting point to when the ruling class decided it is time, we are going to ramp up the class war. Because that is when, I mean, the largest transfer of wealth happened.
Mm-hmm.
Like that, so many small businesses around this country just went under in that event. And then you had the vaccine shit, like just so many different um, tactics of class warfare were waged on us in that one year. And all of us have been trying to make sense of it, but they just keep escalating. Like things are ramping up. And I know I'm not alone in feeling it, because my friends who aren't even politically paying attention to things, they feel it. They feel it in their pocketbook. They see it
Mm-hmm.
in their bills. Like things are ramping up. We are full speed ahead. And like I just don't know what else it's going to take at this point for us to realize we really have to do something. Like we can't just put this off for the next generation. This is our time. Like, and I know a lot of millennials, we've been caught up in Gen X and even Gen Z. A lot of us have been in this cycle of, okay, you have to go to school, you have to make money, you have to, find your path to make money in life. And I think we just all have to take a step back for a moment and realize that was a distraction. And what we are actually meant for right now is something the ruling class has been holding off for over a century at this point. We have to bring revolution to this country. Like this is our time. I very much feel it in my heart. And that's what I'm talking about with all of my friends going forward. And I'm telling you, it's people are on board. Like people are on board. They want different. They're sick of this shit. Like no one wants to work to barely make ends meet. Like we are all in constant survival mode here, and it's not healthy as a society.
Bad cookies. Go see the White House counselor. That's not acceptable. How dare you? How dare you? God damn it. It's always bad cookies. So the thing is, like, everybody I know as well is on board for, like, the only way out of this is mass civil disobedience. The challenge is conquering the fear that's attached to that.
Yeah. And that's where like the CEO killer, like I think that's where like something was very much tapped into in at least those first 4-5 days before our Luigi was apprehended. But those first like 4 days of that narrative of someone did ultimate vigilante justice, something that we've been taking in through Batman and all kinds of superhero films for the last 20 years. So like it shouldn't have been that shocking to the ruling class, really. Like I've watched Dexter, I've watched The Punisher. Like we've all seen vigilantes go after bad guys. It's pretty much in there in our heads. So like we finally saw someone do something like that. And I think it tapped into something very, very real that, had it sustained, maybe would have escalated further. And that's where, like, I don't know, I'm not fully convinced that Luigi is the guy, because I feel like at the end of the day, they wanted the conversation to go from CEO killer, like deny, defend, depose, to free Luigi. And that's what now we're talking about, is free Luigi. instead of, so like the entire conversation is now, did he, didn't he? Instead of those first 4 days where we were all like, whoa, this is huge. We're all connecting over this. And
No,
I just think that's very intentional, or just very convenient, that, you know, it could have kept going and maybe it would have turned into something bigger. And I'm not saying necessarily more heads had to be shot, but, you know, things could have kept going off of that spark, off of that moment. But instead, the conversation is now free Luigi. So,
I mean, I'll say it. It's a good start, but we can do better. But yeah. So, I mean, the thing is, I feel like with this whole incident, I know a lot of people think the whole thing's a psyop. I don't. I think the ruling class has been shook. And I feel like their sense of grandiosity has been rattled. Because I've said this before in previous streams, but for these people under the capitalist system who get to the top, to those people who understand at least a cursory grasp of psychology, a lot of these people have severe cluster B, like narcissistic.
They think they're untouchable.
Yeah. So when they realize they are touchable,
mm-hmm.
that's caused a panic. And we've seen that panic across the board.
Yeah.
And actually I have something really cool to show everybody here. Which one is it? Right here. This was really interesting because I'm going to go on record and say that I don't buy anything when it comes to this Luigi guy. I don't buy a single part of it. I think here's my analysis, and it's the only correct one you guys will see because I'm humble like that. I think the modus operandi of the capitalist class is they cannot let people think that someone can just murder one of their own and get away with it. I think that's what all of this is about. It's about them hammering home to you and I, we dirty proles, that, hold on. I mean, you can kill children and poor people and homeless people.
You can kill a homeless man on the subway, apparently.
Yeah, you can kill a homeless man in the subway, but you can't just kill a $20 million net worth person. That's not okay.
That person mattered millions more than you did. Clearly.
They were the real working class hero, which was an article some dipshit actually fucking wrote. But that's what they're like. I'm telling you guys, this is joy for me because they're scared. Yeah. You can tell they're scared. You can tell it in their propaganda channels, in all of the reactionary talking heads that are just parroting the same narratives.
Yeah.
The widespread panic, they are scared.
Yeah.
And that's because they've realized that it's like, oh shit, we actually do find out if we fuck around enough. So I'm just going to show this real quick. This is friend of the show, Tyler, the Fix Collective. But this kind of fucked my head up a little bit.
Did New York just drop all the charges against Luigi Mangione? That is the question we are now asking. We also can see that there is a motion for transport of the prisoner. So now questions are really being raised. So looking through the New York City court system here, we can actually see that there are no charges on record for the case against Luigi Mangione whatsoever. Through the Pennsylvania side, there is actually a order granting for a motion to transport the prisoner. But the question is, do they have the wrong guy? That is what everyone is asking. Now, when you look at this, you're going to say, well, there surely was just charges a few days ago, wasn't there? And yes, this was actually the case details here, where there was 1 count of intentional murder, loaded firearms charges, and the silencer charge here. But now there is nothing slated on the docket whatsoever here as you look through the case details. Lots of questions are to be asked, and hopefully we can actually get some answers to this.
Yeah, interesting.
Yeah.
Because there were articles today saying like Prince found. I'm like, Prince, okay. I want to see very, I mean, beyond reasonable doubt, there needs to be evidence brought against Luigi to convince me it is him. Because yeah, I think it's the change in narrative is what usually snaps me out of things. And for the first 4 days of the narrative, we got this is a criminal mastermind. Someone pulled off a perfect crime. It seems so poetic. And then the shift happened where, okay, he's not a mastermind because he was just caught with all the evidence on him in a McDonald's a couple states away. Like, complete change in character. Again, set up, payoff. You set up this person one way, you go a different way with it. It just doesn't make sense. So yeah, it doesn't make sense that this is the guy, because either we were lied to about it being a perfect crime and they just let us run with it for a few days, or we were lied to about other things. I don't know.
Yeah. I think Caitlin Johnstone summarize the best. Okay, off to McDonald's. Let me see. Got my fake ID, my murder weapon, my manifesto saying I killed the CEO because I'm mad at health insurance companies. Oops, almost forgot my silencer.
Yeah.
Okay, now I'm ready for McNugget. Like,
I know.
I'm not lying when I say she literally is incapable of missing.
I know, Caitlin. She is incredible.
This was perfect because it's like it completely points out how unbelievably absurd this whole thing is.
Yeah.
It's like, first, I mean, I don't even know where to start. First off, like fingerprints. What? Okay. So he took, let's just unpack this for a second. They found it on a water bottle. So he's like, okay, I killed the CEO. Now I am parched from killing that CEO. So let me remove my glove and drink from a water bottle. And then I am going to make that, like, you can't go from this was like a masterful gambit to
he left a water bottle near the scene of the crime. Yeah. I know.
I am so comically dumb that I went to McDonald's with everything that could possibly incriminate me. There's a notebook too. Apparently,
it was like the top manhunt too, like national news. Not everyone in every state in the country was talking about this murder. Like, when was the last time that happened? It's been a while, and that's where I guess me into. It's been a while since we had a big show trial in this country. And I can't help but to think that, part of their hope was we'll just book someone, even if it's not the best evidence, it's enough to book them, to bring them to trial, and to have, again, the national conversation be free Luigi for the next 2 years while it's in the court system, because it detaches us from the main conversation, the origin event, what it stood for, it's now Luigi is becoming the face, a cartoon character. I think, I don't know, that's, to me, also doesn't really sit right, because what did they see again those first 4 days? They saw a national, huge reaction where this killer became an overnight folk hero.
Yep.
That doesn't happen often. That really doesn't. It does not happen often, and it does not happen organically. And we saw it happen. And I think they couldn't let us have a badass like folk hero, and they gave us a cartoon character instead. I don't know. That's it. Just seems like when I started seeing the Luigi shit, I was like, are you serious right now? Like, it's not going like Robin Hood, Bruce Wayne, like vigilante, heroic vigilante route. You're gonna reduce him visually to a Nintendo comic book character type. Like, that, I don't know, it doesn't have the same impact like as the original Prime did by now going off of Luigi imagery, I think. Although I have seen some good ones of like Luigi with a gun, and I don't know, I've seen some cool like memes with Luigi, but I don't know, it's just not as badass. I'm like, I kind of think they wanted him to be less badass, and that's kind of part of why we're like, yeah, Luigi, that sticks. This guy, he looks close enough to it. We'll just go with it.
Well, also the thing is too, like, I mean, he doesn't even look like the same guy. We're seeing those comparisons where it's like, he doesn't even look the same. First off, nobody's named Luigi. That's not a real name. Shut the fuck up. That they made that up. They're like, let's do some Mario memeing to get this out of here. Like, come on. I've been saying this for years. We deserve better psyops.
Yeah.
Like, stop insulting our intelligence. I almost feel like that's deliberate. Like it's a demoralization campaign.
Yeah.
Because they're like, you're so dumb, you'll believe this bullshit. Because this is so ridiculous. So
I mean, they got away with it so long, though. They've gotten away with so much, though. I don't blame them for now believing that we are in fact that stupid. Like, I had a film professor that legitimately believed that we should treat our audience like they were stupid, like spell things out for them in our writing. And I don't know, it just very much never sat right with me, because I was like, you have to do the opposite. You have to treat the audience like they're not stupid. Otherwise, they'll think you're preaching to them, and it doesn't come across in the same way. But like, I think once you get to a certain point, you really do just think people, especially poor people, are just stupid, and that they're just going to buy into whatever propaganda talking point goes out there. To their credit, a lot of people do buy into it. And that's like part of what we have to go up against going forward, is just how many layers of propaganda we are all trying to navigate through, because there's only so much. I don't know. It's a lot. There's so many narratives we've been fed since birth at this rate.
Yeah. Just to speak to your point about treating the audience like they're stupid, I taught video editing for a hot minute, and one of the main things I said was like, you can shave off a good 2 pages of final draft with just a well-placed shot.
Yeah.
That's really neither here nor there. I just like, you were film nerding, and I felt like I needed to film nerd too.
Yeah.
But, like, you could literally, and that's, I don't know about you, but those are the kind of films I can't stand, where they're like, we need to spoon feed you exposition. Yeah. We don't have to. We just think you're so dumb.
Yeah.
I need 2 people to have this semi-organic conversation where they explain this whole backstory and do all this stuff, instead of like, I don't know, like
show not tell.
Thank you. Show not tell.
Yeah.
Everybody forgot show not tell in the last like couple decades, and I don't know why. Well, now it's like, no, we need to like orchestrate this like awkward sit-down conversation where two people talk at each other and like reveal all this like backstory and dialogue, even though like nobody is having a drink with a bro and doing that, and like it completely takes you out of it. But yeah. Anyway, no, that's correct. We do need to I feel like the biggest tool I've used, at least in helping people kind of see through the propaganda, is just, I tell people to ask yourself, this is kind of a test that I at least run with people. I tell them to run this test. And it's kind of simple insofar as like, with what you're telling me right now, ask yourself, would you tell this to someone else and not add anything? As in, like, would this be believable if you told someone else it without any sort of greater context?
Yeah.
And if the answer is no, then you should question what you've accepted to be true.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, there's a lot of inconsistencies in general when it comes to a lot of the narratives that we are fed. And once you just start picking at it and critically thinking, that's something I'm not sure if our public schools are teaching anymore, but critical thinking was a part of our curriculum back in my day, where like that was literally part of the test. It was this whole section that was just on critical thinking, and it had questions designed to get you to think critically. Like that used to be that used to be something we cherished as people. And yeah, that was a huge one that kind of snapped me out of even COVID. Was like, it was when the authoritarian, you can't ask questions, don't question any of this, started coming in through the narrative that I was starting to question. So yeah.
Yep, that was the big one for me too, because I started out with the COVID era like completely on board. I'm like, okay,
Yeah, like I don't know anything about health. Like, okay.
I was more like, okay, well, I've been talking about a pandemic for a long time because I think that has always been kind of a threat. Now it's happened, so we gotta get on board and okie doke. And then they're like, yeah, 6 feet distancing, and yep, it's a coronavirus, but if you get this medical procedure, it's totally gonna provide immunization, which right off the bat, I'm like, wait, for a coronavirus? What?
Yeah.
Sorry? Yeah. And then it just like, it got more and more ridiculous. And then people got into that weird point where it's like, you're either dissenting or you're pretending to not dissent, but you still know this is kind of bullshit.
Yeah.
And that's where we're at. And that's where it ended up. And now we're on the other side of it, where it's like, the majority of us are like, I feel like I was just in a relationship with a narcissist for 3 years. What happened?
Yeah. I mean, that's the thing, is like, we're all kind of coming out of, everyone had to come out of the fog of the propaganda, because as far as I'm concerned, COVID was the most massive propaganda machine we've experienced in probably ever. I don't know, like huge what we took in through, again, like 1 year of our lives, maybe 2 years, and I mean, we're still hearing a lot of the narratives, but they're slowly slipping away here and there. But massive propaganda, and what that does to you psychologically, like, is insane. It really fucks with your mind.
Oh yeah,
on so many levels. And that's why, like, I think even Caitlin Johnstone has pointed on, this is psychological warfare. This isn't just class warfare. This is psychological. Like, what they're doing, how they are manipulating you in the media and on social media, to deeply psychological warfare here that we are experiencing. And I don't think enough people are angry enough at that.
Yeah. the way I kind of bridge people with the COVID stuff is I'm just like, hey, let's say it all occurred as it's on paper. They use it as an opportunity.
Yeah.
And I think the ruling class will use any event as an opportunity. What's that popular phrase? Don't let a good tragedy go to waste. That's kind of how I look at this, where it's like, yeah, it could all be deliberate. They could have all like, let's tinfoil hard. I'm always going to tinfoil hard. I'm the tinfoil Marxist. Deal with it.
Yeah.
But let's say it wasn't big tinfoil and, you know, like the virus broke out of a lab, or maybe even it just like happened as like a bat flew into an elephant and the elephant shit out like a penguin, or I don't know, whatever they're going with. But let's say that happened. All the ruling class is going to look at is like, okay, this is an event. It's causing a lot of harm. How can we capitalize on it? Because that's what capitalists do. They capitalize.
Yeah.
So they were like, yeah, this is the perfect opportunity to enact, and look what they got.
Yeah.
What do you guys think those vaccine passports were for?
Yeah.
Those weren't accidental.
Yeah.
That framework is still set up right now.
Yeah.
All of it's still set up right now. All the surveillance tactics, all the lockdown protocol, all of it.
Yeah.
They pushed so much shit through because people were scared.
Under emergency. Yeah.
Yep. And I just heard breaking news that Biden, I don't even know what to make of this, but Biden just extended the COVID emergency to 2029.
What does that mean?
Well, it's 1 year before, what's that year? 2030. Why does that sound familiar? 2030.
Yeah, that
sounds like an agenda.
But like, I'm trying to, because obviously you can't, still claim unemployment or anything like that regarding COVID. If you don't want to go to work for being immunocompromised or whatever, those protections are gone. Work from home protections have mostly disappeared. A lot of the COVID era things that were briefly enacted to help people have all seemed to disappear. But the ones that, help the surveillance state and the fascist state that we're living in, those are the COVID precautions that have lingered, funny enough. Yeah.
That's the interesting part, because it's like for a brief period of time, you had like really tiny elements of socialism.
We had a UBI for a moment. Well, kind of, they had to admit to us, they admitted to us two huge things. A, we're essential workers. We never got a raise, federal raise, but we're essential workers. So that's where, again, general strike. Okay, grocery store workers, you were called essential 4 years ago. Don't show up to work. All of you. Stop.
Yeah, we're essential.
We're essential. Okay, you want $15 minimum wage, you want $20 minimum wage, stop going into your job. And that's obviously beyond just grocery store workers. It's everyone. Because, they called you essential, and then you still are living in poverty now. They made you go to work during a crisis when they were laughing their asses off, stealing our money. They made you go to work and called you essential. Like, that shit would drive me insane. I was working in a restaurant at the time. So my restaurant shut down and never reopened. It just closed down because of COVID. So I truly feel for, the people who were working in grocery stores and stuff, where it's like, you had to go in every day as the stores were basically empty, streets were empty, because they said you were essential to workflow. Ding, ding, ding. You are powerful. Like, our labor is powerful. They admitted it to us then and there, to the point that they had to send us some money. And obviously it wasn't enough. But Trump sent us all a check. You know, briefly, they admitted to us, okay, we have to give you something because otherwise this shit is all going to fall apart.
Mm-hmm.
Those are two huge things that came during COVID that I certainly haven't forgotten about. But, you know, I think that's a huge, huge thing that I think back on, where they admitted us some pretty big things then and there that I think we can shut shit down in this country if we come together. And when we stop capital, they will feel it. They will feel it hard. And like, you know, I know a big thing with even people like being worried about the police state. And I've been mentioning to friends, okay, then let's make it look like COVID again. No one's in the streets. Just stay home. Just stay home. You won't be on the street. You won't come face to face with a cop. Just let's do general strike and I'll stay home. We did it once. We hunkered down. We, you know, utilized our pantries and all of that. We did it during COVID. We can do it again, but under organized strikes, organized general strike. Like, we have the power. I think it's just people don't visualize it. And we've been so convinced that it won't work. We've been so convinced it's a fool's errand. But the things convincing us of this shit is coming from the top. It's coming from the ruling class, who, of course, they don't want revolution to ever happen. It goes against their bottom line. It goes against their best interests to have class consciousness. So everything they do is to prevent that shit from ever happening.
Yep. And I mean, here's the quandary. You know, everybody's convinced it never works, but anytime we do direct action, W. Every time it's a W. Every time there is a W.
Yeah.
You know, up here, our postal service is striking. It's what's called a crown corporation. They're probably going to get a W. The dock workers strike, huge W. Mm-hmm. Every time there's direct action, there's a W.
Yeah.
But people need to think bigger, because these are localized. These are like contained within a certain object. We need like a collective sort of process. And if that happens, dude, imagine what we could accomplish.
Unstoppable.
If the whole country was just like so unified that we're like, yeah, we don't actually, you're not actually going to go and fund like a genocide against innocent people in the Middle East. You're just not going to do that, or you're just like, the country's going to shut down. Yeah. And that's how we're doing it.
That's where, like, even this recent killing, you know, it was a moment where they realized they were mortal. Mm-hmm. Like, I really think a lot of these billionaires, as you said, they're cluster B, very much narcissistic, and they think they're untouchable. And I really think they think they're pretty much immortal at this point. Like, they think nothing can touch them. They're going to get everything they want. And I think that is why this was so scary, because it was realizing, oh, that could happen to us. Oh, the people are angry. Like, I don't, you know, we'll see where it goes from here, but.
I just want to address Mastermind Hour here, because like, this is a constant point of fear when it comes to a general strike. There's ways around this. First off, you can do a soft strike, which is you just don't buy corporate, you buy local. Mm-hmm. No matter what
necessities, you buy necessities. You know, you don't,
or you just buy local. You don't feed the corporations at all. Number one. Number two, and this is something I want to get going off the ground in the new year, because I'm going to spend the rest of this year shit posting and being generally insufferable. This is an idea, okay? Most people have sick days, they have PTO, they have what have you. Unfortunately, a lot of people don't, but a lot of people also do. Coordinate your sick days and your PTO. Doesn't hurt you one bit. You are operating within the bounds of your company, and you are also contributing to a greater cause.
Mm-hmm.
That's number one. Number two, yeah, we need to get better at mutual aid. And
Yeah.
that's something we can all do together. That is another part of that. If you want to do a general strike, you need to be able to sustain. But
with that, though, I just want to add a point.
Mhm.
With mutual aid, I think it's one of those things that I think people think we have to have a perfectly functioning system before we take the plunge. And that's where I think personally we have a lot of procrastinators in this country. But when things hit the fan, that is when we will see the most mutual aid, in my opinion, because I've seen it in now Western North Carolina. When things get disrupted, I mean, we had a hurricane disrupt us, not even strikes, but it disrupted everything in multiple states now. And when something like that happens, the people come closer together. People were traveling from states away to bring in water, to bring in food, to bring in diapers and formula, heaters. People are supplying tents. There is so much mutual aid happening on the ground as we speak, and it's happening organically in Appalachia right now, like rural, red, very red areas here. It's incredible, and that tells me again, it is possible. I think you just have to have faith in humanity, and I know that's hard to do right now, but you have to have faith that we will come together through this. You're not going to starve. You're going to have people in your community providing food and blankets and shelter. You will have that. And again, it's just been drilled into us so many times that it's just all these bad things are going to happen when revolution happens. It's just all going to be horrible. And I think we really need to start thinking positively here about how there will be more wonderful things also happening simultaneously. Humans will surprise you. People will come together. We will get through it. I really do think that we have to, otherwise, what are we doing here? We have
It's
to have
either
to fight for.
we either have a choice between Star Trek or Star Wars.
Yeah, or we're either gonna keep going down this authoritarian dystopian future train that we're on, or we're gonna realize that is not the future we want. And even if we can't agree on what's going to replace it directly afterwards, we have to at least do something about it right now.
Yeah. And I mean, also, I feel like a big point of fear that I need to push back against is a lot of people, when it comes to a general strike, it's like everybody is really worried about this kind of siege warfare scenario. Do you guys have any idea? I don't know if you guys have been in the same meetings I have, but I've worked in management. I'm in these meetings where they count the beans and talk about profits. They're fucking obsessed with that shit. They are paranoid about it.
Yeah.
I'm not kidding. If a general strike happened, I feel like there would be a resolution a lot quicker than people think. We're not talking weeks. it's like interrupting days of commerce. Days. One
These
day.
people make so
One
much
day.
money. I know. Mhm.
One day is already like a crisis. That's a fucking, oh my God. Think of that on like a massive level. 2 days, 3 days. Look again, I hate to point back to it, but look at the trucker convoy up in Canada.
Mhm.
That didn't take a while. That was a very quick fucking process.
They will feel it fast. Yeah.
The second they disrupted capital, shit got turned around real quick.
Mhm.
So it's less of a like we're like stockpiling food for months, and more of a like, all right, week off of work.
Yeah.
And by the like a work week of like absolutely no like commerce, that is crippling. That
Oh,
is
yeah.
like people on their knees begging you,
Especially when you
what you
go
want.
across the board, like across
Yeah.
the board. I think a big thing I'm trying to figure out how to do is for prison strikes, because that's another untapped group of workers that should join us in general strike. Like when things happen, when we are on strike, we need modern day slaves. You know, they are working for pennies. We need them desperately to join as well. Like we need prisoners, we need working homeless, we need teachers and students. Student walkouts. Can you just imagine, like, even if teachers don't have the courage to strike collectively, okay, what do the students have to lose? Walk out. Don't even like just go to school and then walk out and sit on the front lawn. You think that like nationwide, what are you doing right now? Like you're learning about this horrible country that condones genocide. Like stand up for something, do something about it. Like we all have power. I think it's again across the board. Think of igniting every person across this country into some form of action. But if we can do it simultaneously, yeah, it won't take long to turn things around. Like I think 1 week would it would probably get us healthcare in this country at the
I
very
honestly
least.
think a flex of 3 days, if we were class conscious enough to do it for just like a couple days, I think we'd see miracles. I really
Yeah.
do. I
Because
think,
once you prove that we can do it,
yeah. It's not a matter of like we have to like deal with like this long-term siege warfare thing. It's more like save up for a week, get some extra supplies, find a good like online game to play.
yeah,
You
binge a
know,
few shows, yeah.
yeah, binge a few shows, watch watch The Sopranos if you
Again,
haven't.
they did this to us. They did this to us during COVID.
They
Did
did.
this to us. They made us hunker down. A few days in, they had celebrities sing us Imagine. After a few days, the celebrities were already going crazy. They did this to us already. We saw it work. They had to give us money. They had to mail us checks to sustain things.
The fucking TikTok.
I think that is the biggest admission we've gotten from our government in a very long time, that they admitted, yeah, if you aren't working collectively, there's no way to keep things going in this country unless we mail you checks. That's a huge, huge own, I think.
My favorite was when Trudeau up here was talking about how important during COVID all the truckers were for delivering the goods. And then I guess he changed his tune. But yeah, like, fuck, man. Do you remember the TikTok dances? Because
Yeah.
that's still burned into the back of my brain.
Yeah.
I'm just like, did that really happen?
Yeah,
like what?
Nurses and stuff, yeah.
What was that? Like what?
Crazy.
Like you're doing cool. Like what? Anyway.
Yeah.
But yeah. No, it's the thing is, like, I think people are greatly underestimating, like, we really, really, really don't need a lot. The only thing these fuckers need, like, look at what one CEO getting clapped is causing. This is causing, like, bourgeois pandemonium.
Yeah.
Think about what if they got the message that, like, literally the entire working class is ready to just, like, say fuck you for 1 day, 2 days, 3
Yep.
days.
Yeah.
Panic. Massive panic.
Yeah.
Because again, these people, and it's not coming at it from a psych angle, because I do have, the degree and all that. A lot of these personality types, it's not just about the money. It's about what the money represents in terms of these people's ego functions.
Yeah.
So, like, their sense of identity, what they attach to themselves, because a lot of these people can't, like, regulate their own self-esteem. So they need external output for that self-esteem, and the wealth, the power, all that. Like, I am telling you, like, any kind of L on that level is going to be a catastrophic event psychically for the ruling class.
And for the working class, though. I think it is what we need. Working class people in this country need to understand how powerful we actually are. There is a force of people in this country. We're just convinced that we don't have power, but we do. We have so much power, but we just have to come together. And that is why they work on divide and conquer every day, to divide us, because it's working. It's working like a charm. And, we have to get over that. I don't know how, because it's so effective. Like, even Free Luigi is now, are you with him or against him? They find a way to separate it into this side versus this side on everything. It's hard not to fall for it sometimes, because it goes with our programming to some extent, like good versus evil. It's just so, these two sides of any conversation is very natural for us to get caught up in. But at some point we have to transcend that.
I feel like we just need to keep pushing back and keep saying, like, guys, focus on the prize.
Yeah.
And just saying, like just keep the focus on the topic.
Class war.
I did want to make sure, because this is like going to be the laziest segue ever, but I feel like that's why I feel like a big part of this is, like, the ruling class is also kind of really trying to push some kind of, like, major conflict. Because I do think this is part of it. It's like narcissistic rage, if you guys are aware of it. But I feel like a part of them are really trying to literally, like, if I can't have the cake, I'm gonna smash it.
Oh,
so,
yeah. Throw it on the ground. That's what they're, I know.
Yeah.
Petulant. They're petulant children. And I think we will see that more and more going forward.
Yeah, exactly. And so, with the most masterful segue ever, I did want to get into Oppenheimer, because I think this is also an absolutely brilliant video you did. Let's talk about the bomb. I like the stars. That really emphasizes the bomb.
Thank you.
You're very welcome.
Hello, folks, and welcome to Film Spectacle. And today I would like to talk about the gigantic elephant in the room right now. The fact that the doomsday clock is set to 90 seconds to midnight for the second year in a row, meaning we are the closest to global nuclear catastrophe we have ever been. And no matter who wins this November's election, this doomsday clock will keep getting closer. So to explore this subject, I'll be looking into two films about the nuclear bomb. Christopher Nolan's Nolan's 2023 summer blockbuster Oppenheimer, and Stanley Kubrick's 1964 Dr. Strangelove, or How I Learned to Stop Worrying and Love the Bomb. Kubrick's a satire released at the height of the Cold War, and Nolan's more serious look at the bomb, released too when tensions between the US and Russia are the highest they've been in decades. But when addressing the serious nature of nuclear war and the bomb itself, it's actually Kubrick's use of satire that's far more effective. So let's get into it. Based on the book American Prometheus by Kai Bird, Christopher Nolan's Oppenheimer is a truly cinematic biopic packed with incredible performances by Cillian Murphy, Robert Downey Jr., Matt Damon, Emily Blunt, Jason Clarke, and Florence Pugh. We closely follow Robert Oppenheimer while him and his team of scientists made the atomic bomb, followed by his tragic fall from grace afterwards during the McCarthy era, when he was later brought to Washington for a security hearing where his loyalty to the United States is challenged. Now let's look at Stanley Kubrick's Dr. Strangelove. Based on the book Red Alert by Peter George, it stars George C. Scott, Sterling Hayden, Slim Pickens, a very young James Earl Jones, and Peter Sellers in 3 different roles. Dr. Strangelove follows the hypothetical but very realistic scenario where one U.S. Air Force general, fearing an evil communist plot, decides to initiate a nuclear attack on the Soviet Union, setting into motion a frantic gathering in the war room with the president, generals, and ambassadors all trying to fix this colossal mistake, all while the countdown of nuclear annihilation is looming in the background. So as you can see, 2 very different movies. Oppenheimer celebrates the bomb as a scientific marvel and the father of it as our leading protagonist, and Downey Jr.'s Lewis Strauss as the antagonist, whereas in Dr. Strangelove, the bomb is the antagonist. But let's look a little closer. In Nolan's Oppenheimer, the big climactic moment is...
I'm sorry, just gotta say I lost my shit when you made that analysis. Like the antagonist thing. Oh, so good. Anyway.
is the Trinity test. Shot on location in New Mexico with the help of an expert special effects team and a shit ton of TNT and gasoline, plus a little enhancement from CGI, this moment is breathtaking. The music swells, heightening the tension, then all the sound and score drops, creating an eerie silence. We see a flash of light, followed by a giant blaze of raw firepower in all its glory, so big it consumes the whole IMAX screen. This one moment is the main reason audiences went in droves to see this movie in theaters. Truly, I give it to Nolan and his crew. It was an epic explosion.
Yeah,
but here's where we need to take a moment and pay attention to the deliberate choice that Christopher Nolan made to show the Trinity test bomb in the beautiful way that he did, but to never show the dropping of the bombs on Hiroshima and Nagasaki in the film or any of the destruction from them. Instead,
Master
the
Mom,
audience
do not make me
learns
go
of
down
these
that rabbit
bombs
hole.
through Oppenheimer.
I
as
will
he
tinfoil
quietly
you
takes in
into
the
oblivion.
news. So while Nolan gives plenty of screen time towards the brilliance of the bomb, he never really shows the other brutal, destructive side that killed hundreds of thousands of innocent people in Japan. And to be fair, it is considered by some to be a tasteful choice not to get too graphic, but considering the film already earned the R rating for sex and nudity, it's a very intentional decision, either by Nolan or someone above him, to not show any blood or gore from the bomb itself. And though he mentions the number of people killed from the 2 bombs and the radiation afterwards, it's all done through Oppenheimer's perspective to show how guilty he feels. But if Nolan intended to provide a statement with this film beyond how Oppenheimer was feeling at the time, then he would have shown the audience the actual consequences of the bombs on Japan. One scene in particular comes to mind when Oppenheimer is watching a slideshow presentation of the the aftermath from the 2 bombs in Japan. This scene is all in one shot at one fixed angle, focusing on Oppenheimer's reaction to the slideshow. We, the audience, never actually see what he is seeing in a reverse shot. And this would have been the perfect opportunity for Nolan to show actual historical images of Japan after the bombs were dropped. Instead, Nolan stays on Oppenheimer, and by leaving this reverse angle out, he is actively softening and sanitizing the use of the bomb, all while supporting Western Empire narratives that the bomb was a justified way to end the war. And that's why I want to compare the portrayal of the bomb in Nolan's Oppenheimer to how it's portrayed in Stanley Kubrick's Dr. Strangelove. As soon as General Ripper launches the nuclear attack against the Soviets, the bomb becomes our main antagonist.
Rick, how dare you?
The lust and hunger for war in the generals,
How dare
the
you?
incompetency of the U.S. government, and the absurdity of nuclear war to
Probably.
the center stage.
You brought
Through
it.
exaggerated characters like Jack D. Ripper, Dr. Strangelove, and General Buck Turgidson, this film highlights the paranoia behind Cold War thinking and the utter lunacy of the arms race. Take the scene in the war room, for example, where General Turgidson, played perfectly by George C. Scott, pitches that since Ripper had already fired the first shot, they should double down and launch an all-out attack against the Soviets. This is quickly rejected by President Muffley. Kubrick's use of satire shows the audience how psychopathic this rhetoric is, how easy nuclear war can be triggered out of hysteria, and with its release during the Cold War, this message resonated powerfully with audiences well beyond the theater. Compare again to Oppenheimer, which was released in the midst of our new Cold War with Russia, and Nolan's blockbuster glorified the bomb, romanticized the creation of it, and made the background villain of his film the Soviets and communism. Oppenheimer went on to become a big summer blockbuster, making it the 3rd highest grossing R-rated film of all time, and it went on to win numerous Academy Awards, including Best Director and Best Picture for Nolan, where he had no further commentary on current Cold War tensions to add. And on that very same night, a propaganda film about the war in Ukraine won Best Documentary. And that's why all of this matters, because new Cold War tensions have been on the rise ever since 2014, when the U.S. overthrew the democratically elected government in Ukraine, installing U.S. NATO puppet leader Zelensky, followed by several years of very intense anti-Russia propaganda spewing from Rachel Maddow and all of Western media, along with the Democratic Party after Hillary Clinton's hilariously embarrassing loss to Trump in 2016, leading to even more American tax dollars and weapons being sent to literal neo-Nazis, all to fight a proxy war with Russia.
Get on with it. Yes, get on with it!
Anyways, where Stanley Kubrick chose to make a statement with Dr. Strangelove, meant to shock audiences into some sense during the height of the Cold War, Christopher Nolan chose to make a cinematic celebration of the bomb during our new Cold War. And while Nolan hinted at the disastrous side of the bomb, he ultimately justified its use against Japan in World War II, all while supporting Western Empire narratives about the Cold War, the Soviet Union, and communism, which makes it rather hard for me to see this film as anything but very good propaganda. But that's what this all comes down to, folks. Hollywood and the greater entertainment industries have become an extension of the US propaganda machine. Gone are the days of films like Dr. Strangelove, which transcended the spectacle and got audiences talking about the real threat of nuclear war and how we should work towards world peace. Instead, we're given Empire-approved stooges who happily play this role for fame and fortune. So here we are in a new Cold War, and the Bulletin of Atomic Scientists has set the clock at 90 seconds to midnight. The Biden-Harris administration continues to poke the big red Russian bear by sending long-range missiles to Ukraine, and US warmongers are already sowing seeds for war with China. And then there's Israel, which has been committing a genocide against Palestinians for nearly a full year with full US support, and is now actively bombing and terrorizing Lebanon, trying to bait a nuclear power like Iran into
I love how at the end you're just like, by the way, fucking Israel. Let's go. I love it.
To a first strike to start a hot war. We are living in the early days of World War III, no matter who wins this next election. It really comes down to whether we're going to do something about it or not. And until we stop playing their two-party charades and come together, then I'm afraid we're all gonna go down on this ship together instead. So what's it gonna be?
Yeah. Yeah, it's crazy how it's ramped up even since I released that video. That's like a month or 2 months old now. And it's like crazy how they have escalated. Israel's now bombing another country. Like things have escalated so much more since even just in the last month. It's insane.
Yeah, that's y'all, that's why I wanted to kind of give an, shout out to the work Leah's been doing with Film Spectacle. It's because people need to fucking see this. Jesus Christ. They need to see these like breakdowns of what like millions of people are watching.
Yeah.
And
And some of
consuming,
it
and
is
that goes.
sneaky. Some of it is sneaky propaganda, like very sneaky. It's under the surface of what you're taking in, and it goes back decades now. Decades of propaganda in this country, coming especially through Hollywood, through Hollywood, because these are highly emotional films. Like you're following a character, you're following their emotions, you're following their journey. You are getting sucked into this universe that you're being presented to in this film. It's very, very sneaky what they're able to accomplish, like regarding especially Western narratives. Like, especially even like, again, the revolving door. Like, people who work in the deep state are working in Hollywood. Like they're contributing to script rewrites. If anyone wants to use like military vehicles or military insignia or anything military, they have to have the military come in and look at their script and approve it. Like they literally have teams of people tweaking the narrative behind the scenes on behalf of our department, our State Department and stuff. Like it's dirty. It's dirty what they're doing to us. Like especially if you love movies, because I love movies and I get sucked into them, and I just it's a very, very powerful form of propaganda.
I feel like, I don't know if you're the same, but I feel like I have to separate like the screenwriting and like the cinematography and the editing. I have to separate that from like the propaganda narrative. I feel like I have to do that with movies now, where it's like, okay, I need to judge this just on its merits. I feel like I had to do that with the original Transformers movie, the original Michael Bay one, which I will say I personally think was a pretty good film.
Yeah.
But I had to separate that from the military-industrial complex, like obvious shilling. Like the obvious, like, we love fucking war here. You need to love war. Like, I had to separate that from like, okay, that was really good editing. I feel like it was an okay story. I feel like I have to do that with everything nowadays, where it's like I have to. I'll take one of my favorite bands. One of my favorite bands is Metallica. I have to listen to like Ride the Lightning without. And I have to separate the fact that Lars, who didn't even understand what the internet fucking was at the time, sued Napster because he thought they were physically stealing his songs like through the internet. If you look at interviews with him, he thought it's like the most boomer shit of like the century. He was like, well, I thought they were like stealing the music through the internet. It's like, no, it's just a copy of. Was this all over you just not understanding what the internet is? And it turned out it was. And apparently James the whole time was like, internet? I don't know. Just figure it out. I'm going to go shoot things.
I feel like I was able to separate art from artist for a while, but it's getting harder for me in the last year, especially with the genocide, because there's actors. I mean, collectively, most of Hollywood is staying silent. They're ignoring something that literally your teenage daughter, anyone can open their phone and see a baby's head blown off. And they have nothing to say with it. They were very vocal about Me Too. They were very vocal about climate activism, very vocal about telling us pronouns. They've been very vocal when it comes to politics, but they won't touch this. They won't touch the worst crime against humanity we have all literally watched unfold in front of our eyes for the last year. And they are just not saying shit about it. Worse, some of them told us to go vote for it now. Like, and that was a big one where it's like even actors that I was like, I can overcome, I guess, your silence. It hasn't ruined you forever. But now it's like, nope. I've seen Anne Hathaway proudly endorse voting for Kamala Harris. And like these are actors that are just ruined for me now. Like, not to say I will never enjoy another performance. Like, I love Princess Diaries. I will watch Anne Hathaway again. But every time I hear her name, I'm now associating it with, you told me to go vote for genocide. Like, permanently ruined. A lot of these, and I think that's partially just me, but it's permanently changed me. Like, this has been a huge unmasking moment because it's deeply personal. Like, all of us are watching this shit on our phone every day. It's taking a huge toll on all of us psychologically, having to see what our government is doing right now. And just the collective silence around it, especially in the arts. Again, that's why I no longer want to be in that industry, because I'm like, I don't care to know any of you. I don't care to shake your hand. I don't care to work on your movies. I don't want to rub elbows with any of these people. I don't know. It's been a huge year for me, kind of canceling that big dream that I still had in my mind. So
you don't have to cancel it, but you might have to repurpose it. Yeah, that's the way I see it, because I'm in the same boat as you. But you gotta also celebrate the few cracks, the few people that kind of willingly fall through the cracks, like Andrew Garfield saying our hearts and our energy should be with the Palestinians in Gaza.
There's been a few. Charles Dance, King, thank you, because he read the ICC or the ICJ, one of those, but he read the criminal case. Like, he did his own broadcast live stream where he read the case against Israel. Like, Game of Thrones major actor here putting his name out there. And there's been a few. There's the woman from Bridgerton, Nicola, I'm not sure her last name, but she's been very outspoken. There's some that have been, and those are the ones that going forward I will support. Like, I will be excited if their name is on a movie. And that's where it's, again, like, these are people who live off of PR. They live off of whether they're liked or not liked in the overall perception. And on my personal level, a lot of them have been completely tarnished. Like, you can't really sell your name anymore. Like, maybe if the movie looks good, if you look good in it, but your name alone no longer sells anything for me, because I've seen who you are. You stay silent during genocide. or you tell me to go vote for it. I'm just,
Yep.
you have lost all attachment to your humanity. Like, I don't know. It's been very eye-opening to me.
Well, I think that's kind of the gist of, to me at least, I feel like that's an argument I make when everybody's like gobsmacked that Kamala Harris lost the election. It's like, she didn't lose to Trump. She lost to the fucking couch.
Yeah.
Because all the people who would have voted for her
Yeah.
just didn't.
Yeah.
They didn't vote for Trump. He got the same
Yeah.
number of votes like the last couple of elections. He's made his cult. He's made his cult,
Yeah.
and that's like his thing. But you, my dear, lost like
14 million.
14 million votes. Yeah. Something like that.
Yeah.
Those weren't people who just like disappeared.
She ran such a successful campaign.
Yeah.
She lost 14 million votes. What?
Hey, what are you gonna do differently from Biden? Nothing. I don't know. Inappropriate laughter. That's enough.
Yeah.
Medicare for all? No, we're not gonna.
No.
It just like, you gotta vote for vibes, and it's like, well, no, nobody's gonna fucking. That's the thing. You gotta get people to go out and do the thing, and you didn't because you're sitting. You know what I think was a lot of people like push back on me on this, but I'm convinced this was the moment. The moment when she had Gaza protesters and she was like, I'm speaking. I think that was Gigi. Not just because it was Palestine, although like that's like a widespread like global like humanitarian like holy fuck. Like, that was the wrong move there, obviously.
Yeah.
But, like, that also communicated, like, okay, this is how you're going to react to any kind of, like, pushback or, like, criticism or, like, protest or, like, accountability. You're just going to be like, fuck you, I'm speaking. Yeah. So, it's like, I don't know. But, yeah, I kind of get it where it's like, you know, don't tell. And again, I'm not one of those people who's like, I listen to what actors say, but like, they're gonna have an influence regardless. Like, everybody has like a favorite actor or whatever. Mm-hmm. And it's like, if you use your platform to kind of push in any way like support of like what's really the Holocaust of our lifetime, like, I'm sorry. Like, you deserve the L. Yeah. And you deserve any kind of, like, lack of success you have in the future because you were part of that mechanism. Mm-hmm. Because it's really simple. You look at that and you go, is this morally okay? And the decision a lot of people have to make is, what is more important to me? And the best example I can make is my childhood hero, who was Muhammad Ali. Because at one point in time, he had to make that decision. He had to make a decision. What is going to be okay for me and what is morally correct? And he went with what is morally correct. And he suffered really bad for it. He lost fucking everything.
I know.
But he was like, I don't care.
Yeah.
This is not okay.
I know. We need that. We need that again. Like, we need that. And that's like, again, these celebrities now where your Anne Hathaways, your Taylor Swifts, your J-Los, Beyonce, they could not work a single day for the rest of their lives and they will be perfectly fucking fine.
Yeah.
They still chose to not put their neck out. They chose to keep every bit of fortune and fame. And yeah, I think they should pay for that. I do. I think people should just be like, yeah, that doesn't interest me anymore. Like, I don't care what Beyonce is putting out anymore. Fuck you. Like, I mean, I'd never liked Beyonce or Taylor Swift that much anyway. So like, it was an easy thing for me to be like, I'm never listening to you. But I really think, I hope both of them suffer sales like ticket sales. And I mean, I guess Taylor Swift just ended her tour thing, but I hope they both have some sort of comeuppance where, yeah, you're not selling to the public anymore because you've been tarnished now. No one likes you anymore because you just endorsed genocide.
Yep.
That should be career ending to me. It should be. It's not clearly, but it should be. And I don't know. I'm just like hoping in the long run we will all wake up to this crazy dream that we're in and I don't know, move forward as a society.
No, I do too. You know, like at the end of the day, they have no excuse also because you see people who are able to do this and they don't care about the repercussions. Look at John Cusack. I mean, yeah, he's a shitlib, but he's speaking out about Gaza.
Yeah.
He's an A-list actor and he's
Yeah.
speaking out about it. Macklemore.
Yeah.
He made a fucking song about Palestine.
Yeah.
Okay? All he got for that was more success.
Yeah.
Like, you can do this.
I know.
So this whole framing of like you have to like go with the flow on something that's atrocious, it's not even true.
Yeah.
Because you can just not do that.
Yeah.
And you're going to get supporters anyway. Nobody's going to, like, yeah, you're going to have, like, Rabbi Shmuley tell you that he's never going to sell you a butt plug again from his butt plug store or whatever. Or, like, you know, like the IDF, like, psychopaths lose their minds. Or, like, Congress gnash their teeth. But at the end of the day, like, you're going to be fine. John Cusack's going to be fine. It's not like he's never going to be hired for a movie again. He's John Cusack.
Yeah.
So, like, all these big stars, like, if Taylor Swift were just like, yeah, fuck Israel, like,
she would be fine.
You think all of her Swifties would be like, no, I'm boycotting you? No,
her fan base has been begging her to say shit. That's the thing. Like, you go under, click any random post about Taylor Swift, like, coming from her, and it's like, speak up for Palestine, speak up for her fans want it, and she bowed to something else. I don't know if it was just a personal decision, I don't know, or it was her record label, I don't know. But, and that's again, even going back to authoritarianism, is that could be part of what's going on in Hollywood. Is some of them have contracts maybe, or you know, marketing deals that they're connected with that might, you know, have clauses in their contract that say you can't speak politically, or I don't know. I'd be curious to see some of these contracts, because part of me thinks that some of these people aren't putting their neck out for contractual reasons.
I just got this Film Spectacle YouTube link. It's right here. Go subscribe to the channel. It's at Film Spectacle. There's a bunch of them.
I'll do another
There
soon,
you
I
go.
promise.
Oh, it's okay. I did want to say, if you wanted to do one, A Bug's Life would be a good film.
It is a really good movie. I need to rewatch it. I didn't get a chance to today, but I watched like a clip from it because I remembered one scene in particular that was really good. And because it was
one ant stands up to us and they may all stand up. That radicalized my ass as a kid.
Yes.
100%. Because that was like, I feel like that movie, and of course they'll never do another film like that. Fuck no. That was a one-off. But that movie and you can tell it radicalized a lot of people, because you still see that, just that one scene being like constantly brought up again and again years after it was made. Yeah. Where it was like, thank you, Bad Cookies, appreciate it. That one scene where that is Hopper the grasshopper, he represents in that movie the bourgeoisie. Yeah. In saying, like, listen, we have to keep them afraid. We have to keep them thinking we're in control, and they have to keep producing. In this movie, it's grain. They have to produce a constant amount of grain. So you need to think of the grain in a bug's life as the surplus value of your labor. Because if you look at that, that is what the grasshoppers are taking, grasshoppers being the capitalists, from the ants, which are the proletariat. I feel like whoever wrote that movie just kind of like, I don't know, maybe they went on Wikipedia and they just looked at like Lenin's like biography and they were like, this would be a good movie for like I don't know, some fucking bugs or some shit.
I looked into it briefly, and it's the same Pixar. So director of Cars, John Lasseter, directed this film. So it has all like the classic Pixar, Randy Newman score, but I think the 3 screenwriters on Bug's Life were all still Pixar, very much Pixar people. But yeah, it's one of those that broke through for sure. It was, it came out around the same time as the movie Ants, and I think for a while, I feel like this was very intentional because those two movies get blurred together in my mind sometimes because they came out so close to each other and they were both about ants. So that kind of messed me up because I was, I guess, a little younger when I first saw both of those films, but Bug's Life definitely sticks with you because of all the commentary it's giving, especially. And just the grasshoppers, they admit that they look down on these ants, like you're low lives. He calls them low lives. And it's just, we see that now every day. Like these people who rule over us hate us. Like they really have so much disdain for us. And I don't know, it's absurd at this point how we're not more angry at how much they talk down to us.
And the funny thing is, in comparison, ants, and it's cool because that has a Z. Ants is way more reactionary because, as far as I remember, it's just a story about like operating within like the established structure.
Yeah, it's not nearly as revolutionary
as opposed to like a Bug's Life being like, we have like an oppressing class, and we eventually, and the end of the movie is incredible. Like they all just link arms and they revolt, and then as happened in the Russian Revolution, eventually the bad guy gets eaten by a giant bird. I remember Lenin writing about that in his writings about when the Tsars got eaten by a giant bird. Not really, but my point is, like, that was a movie that if you haven't seen it, I might do a watch party one day where I just play the whole movie and then our channel gets shut down for copyright.
What, Bug's Life? Yeah.
Yeah, because, like, holy fuck.
Yeah.
Like, nowadays, they wouldn't dare. They would not dare run a movie like that.
Oh, there's so many movies that made in modern day. They wouldn't get greenlit. Just so many movies. I know.
I want to pitch a script where it's like an American health insurance recipient's life. And it's just the story of Luigi. That's like, I don't know. I'm sure you have like super big ideas for the channel, and I'm turbo excited for what you want to come up with for it. But
yeah, I have a long list of movies that I'm trying to work through one at a time. It's a lot to take in, and I'm learning more as I go along, I think also. So I'm trying to get better as I keep going. But yeah, there's a lot to get to. Whole pool of movies to discuss when it comes to especially propaganda.
Yeah, I mean, if I were doing something like that, like, oh my god, like, just think of like, you could do a whole series on like Transformers and like Empire propaganda,
Yeah.
like military industrial complex propaganda,
Mhm.
and also like everything from like status quo to like, oh my god, like
Yeah.
consumerism. And it's like, these are the movies that everybody goes to see, and then they're like super hyped about it, and they're like super
Mhm.
excited, and they're buzzing about it, and then that propaganda they don't notice just kind of just like settles in,
Yeah.
and then they just become a little bit more reactionary by the day.
Yeah. Especially coming off of like we had 20 years of Marvel. Like when you take a lot of trends in Hollywood, 20 years for a niche, genre is a really long time for a trend. Like
Mhm.
musicals eventually fizzled out in like the late 50s. Musicals kind of died. Westerns had their era for a while. Those died. Gangster films had their era for a while. That kind of fizzled out. Like, not to say there's never a film here and there that does that genre again, but when you see a consistent trend of films like that, we've had a trend of, of superhero films that are all PR for American imperialism, really.
Mhm.
We've had that for 20 plus years now. Like box office hit after hit after hit. Like, yeah, that's a huge thing that we've all taken in for a very long time now. And it's just, yeah, I'm waiting on that trend to kind of fizzle out too, where it's like, we've had enough superhero films. Let's take a break for a little while. But I think part of it is they're greenlighting these things because it falls into someone's gonna save the day. You don't have to do anything. Someone's gonna save the day for you. And it glorifies weapons and fighting, and it does a lot. It covers a lot in this superhero genre that I think is, at the end of the day, anti-revolutionary. And again,
Yep.
I think that's by design. Like, who is greenlighting all these scripts in Hollywood? It comes from the top. We have six main media companies that are in charge of all of it. They're the ones greenlighting the projects. It's not your small time independent producers who are mostly doing this stuff anymore. I mean, there are some, but it's mostly coming from the top down, all the funding. So that comes with some concessions. You have to take things out of your script. You have to rework things to fit certain narratives. Comes at a cost.
Yeah, for sure. And I
Yeah.
mean, at the end of the day, there's going to be, I mean, that would be even a series on its own. Just seeing like how dystopian like film gets. Because
It's just getting worse.
yeah, we're getting pretty bad. I
It's just
mean,
getting worse. Live action that isn't live action. Like it's live action that's done all CG. Like what? where are we
yeah,
going? Where are we going with this? Yeah. No, it's all going downhill in general. Like there's a few really good films that I'm looking forward to on the horizon, but in general, it's like the big blockbusters especially are just disappointment after disappointment. Even most of the trash on streaming, like it's just disappointing. I don't know.
yeah. I mean, this is another area that I feel like we need to build dual power. We need to build like a film and TV sort of mechanism outside of the instruments of capital. And I know it's hard as fuck, but
Yeah.
if we could ever do it, just get that going in a direction where it's like it's not. I mean, I'm big in the video game industry, and I'll give an example. A really controversial game that came out in the last 5 years was a game called Disco Elysium.
Mm-hmm.
Disco Elysium was a very controversial game because it was, and the video game industry, in case you guys know, is also an arm of capital. Absolutely. Call of Duty, all those fucking games, so many of those games are pushing like top-down narratives. Disco Elysium was written by a bunch of MLs, Marxist-Leninists, for people who don't know. And they had massive balls. When they won an award for best game, they actually thanked Marx and Engels for the education and then just pieced out. But
That's awesome. I didn't know that. That's really cool.
Yeah, it was written by a bunch of MLs, and it's a brilliant game. It's like a 5 out of 5 game, so nobody could ignore it because it was just that good a game. But it is a game filled with fucking communist propaganda. And the best communist propaganda ever, to the point where like there's so many like parts where there's inside baseball. Like there's a point in the game where you meet like the last communist like in the game, and when you tell him you're a communist, he calls you a liberal. I'm sorry, that's just beautiful, right?
I need to revisit that. My husband is more of the gamer. I dabble. I try my best at gaming. I very much respect video games though as a medium. And Disco Elysium, I think we started it and I couldn't like we both couldn't get into the art style at the time, but I need to get back into it because that really gives me hope. If it has more to it, I will get used to the art style. But it threw me off. I think we were probably finishing a different game, maybe like coming off of a different game and going into it, and maybe that played into the art style. I don't know. It just at the time when we tried playing it, we couldn't get into it. So I'll have to revisit Disco Elysium.
It's a niche game. It's definitely like, it's not your typical like video game, especially by these days standards. It's more like a CRPG, like kind of like cerebral game. But like, one of my favorite parts of it is that it has a mechanism in the game where if you defend the political center, I think it's like 10 times, you actually get an achievement, like a Steam achievement, World's Most Laughable Centrist.
Nice.
Which is incredible. And there's another part where it's like you're talking to someone and they present you with like 2 options. And it's like you can either say something like, well, these immigrants, it's over a sandwich. And it's like, well, these immigrants are going to try and steal your sandwich. And the other one is like, no, that sandwich represents the proletariat. And then if you go like, well, I don't want to say either of these 2 options, the game goes, say one of these communist or fascist things or fuck off. It's like, it's shit like that. Like, it's just a really good, like, it's a really good game for like radicalization.
Yeah.
I recommend it to everybody. If you haven't played Disco Elysium and you like role-playing games, please play Disco Elysium. You will feel more at home than you ever have been if you were a, proletariat enjoyer, if we will.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Yeah. I think I'm going to have to call it here though. It's
me
a little
too.
past my bedtime, but
no, me too, because it's 3 hours and I should go to sleep too. Goddamn. But yeah. Thank you guys for tuning in. Leah, it was a pleasure. This was super fun. I hope you'll
Thanks for having me.
For sure. I hope you'll come back sometime. It would be really fun to do this again. Maybe go over your impending coverage of a Bug's Life. I'm kidding.
No, I do. I'm finishing one right now. Writing one. I want to have a video out this month because it's Anastasia. So it's very topical to December. So I'm very much, but it covers Russian Revolution. So that's what I'm working on currently. But
Oh, I'm
Bugs
so
Life. Bugs Life is for sure on my list of to dos. There's a lot of movies that are on my list, but yeah, I will definitely come around to Bugs Life because it is a fantastic film.
Oh no, you had me in Anastasia.
Yeah.
Let's fucking go. Because I have
is
some thoughts on that movie.
insane how much propaganda is in there. Just yeah.
Oh, of course, because like I remember I fired off a tweet a while ago that got like a lot of pushback, and I kind of knew it would, but I kind of said like Elon Musk is the reason why the Bolsheviks murdered Anastasia. And looking back, I'm like, why are you booing me? I'm right.
I mean, that's the thing though, is like people will understand nuance when it comes to like the French Revolution. Like we're pretty cavalier about Marie Antoinette losing her head, right? Pretty cavalier about that. It's a consequence of revolution. But for some reason, the Russian Revolution is one of those that they time and again want sympathy for the royals, and it's just they hit you over the head with it through Anastasia commonly. Ooh. Because it's like this precious Anastasia died and all the evil Bolsheviks, and it's like it was a revolution. People are gonna die. Like a lot of French aristocrats died. People died in the American Revolution. Like but for some reason it's the Russian Revolution that it's like have sympathy for these royals. So yeah,
because we can't have people siding with the evil communists.
Yeah, no,
that's not going to happen.
Just the capitalist revolutions. Yeah.
But be really cool. I feel like you could actually tie that to the situation with the CEO getting shot. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
You probably already thought of this. But
no, I mean,
if you haven't, that'd be a good way to tie it in, because it's the same weird like brain poison people get, where they I swear the most like effective propaganda is getting us to sympathize with our oppressors.
Yeah.
Sympathize with the people that are making our lives progressively worse. You have people on Twitter right now like losing their minds over one CEO dying and not the 68,000 people a year.
He had a wife and kids. Okay.
Yeah. So let's forget the other 68,000 people who had wives and kids.
Yeah.
That his policies directly resulted in them dying, not just getting poor or going into bankruptcy, dying because of the policies of that company.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's the same thing with the Russian Revolution. It's like, oh my God, people died. Like, what are you doing? It's like, well, think about how many people died probably because of the czars.
Yeah.
Have you thought of that? No, you haven't.
No.
So.
Yeah, I know. We are swimming in propaganda. Again, it's everywhere. It's hard to navigate through. Like, I think we all have to also admit that, we can all be tricked by it. Like, I think if you, like the CEO, think you're untouchable to propaganda, I have something to tell you, you're not. Like, we can all get sucked into these narratives and buy into what they're selling because it's a massive industry meant to fool us, like, on a continuous basis. So yeah, it's hard to navigate through. Like, it's exhausting. So hopefully through the course of my channel, I'll be learning more as I go along, because it just goes so deep. It goes so deep how much propaganda we've been dealing with.
No, for sure. I mean, I'll give a quick story because I know we both got to sleep. I am as most people know, I'm mostly Norwegian. I know you couldn't have determined it by the way I look. That's probably throwing a lot of people. But I'm a quarter Ukrainian. My grandmother came from Kiev. Well, a small village near Kiev. And I was raised to think that she immigrated here because Stalin was evil bad man who killed everybody and blah blah blah, right? Turns out later on in life, despite my own personal like emotional attachment to what is largely Red Scare propaganda,
Mm-hmm.
I found out that oh wait, she actually left because the USSR was collapsing.
Yeah.
So she left to the country that she thought would be the closest to that, as opposed to the Holodomor evil bad Stalin guy thing, which turned out that I learned even later on was mostly because there was a catastrophic crop failure as a result of a drought that actually fucked up most of Western Europe.
Yeah.
Which I see to this day people being like, yeah, Stalin willingly like just killed millions of people. And it's like, did he though? Or did people die because of a natural thing? And
Yeah.
like, what are we saying here?
Yeah.
And people are still repeating that. So
until there's a black book of capitalism out there, and even just like a death count when you cite FDR and Truman, you want to cite their death counts because I think there's a number of US presidents who have quite a number of bodies under them, like
we're
you
gonna
want to talk
need,
about Truman dropping 2 atomic bombs on Japan.
yeah,
like
we're gonna need an entire like library. We can't have a black book on capitalism. We need like a library, and like just Israel alone is gonna be like one whole wing of a library.
I mean, colonization of Africa. Like, you want to tally up those bodies because they're still adding to them every day. They're not done. So it's taken a while for even me to like understand how much I was lied to on especially communism and socialism and just US history in general. Like, the way we're taught in schools is not accurate to history. It's very much one-sided. So it takes a lot to find out what the actual history is. Like, especially now with Google being run by AI, because it's like, it's just going to feed you the narrative in your search, So then you have to dig even deeper to try to figure out like what is fact. Yeah, again, it's exhausting for all of us.
Yeah, because essentially, like, this is what I'm worried about too. Like, eventually, people are going to rely on these AIs and chat GPTs for, like, information. Or it's like, especially if you're, like, talking to someone, you're like, well, let me check chat GPT. Let me check chat GPT. Yeah. And it's like, well, if it's just, like, getting information from, like, propaganda outlets, then it's not actual info. Like, we need a central hub of like what we all understand is correct. And
we don't have that intentionally though. They don't want that for us. Like, I think it does them better to muddy the waters as much as possible so that we are all trying to navigate through it, because again, it's exhausting. Like, that's by design. They don't want a well-informed public being able to make well-informed decisions. Like, they just don't. They want us struggling, barely making ends meet, and confused about what is going on every day.
Yeah. Anyway, I think this would be a great point to call it so we can both go to bed. But I could definitely, if my eyelids would work, I could definitely stay up probably talking to you all night. But thank you so much, Leah, for coming on and giving us an insight into Film Spectacle. Guys, if you have not subscribed to Film Spectacle, please do. That shit is dope.
Thanks.
And as always, keep questioning everything. And I would like to wish everybody a happy preemptive Fred Durst Friday tomorrow. That's very important that we all celebrate that. And yeah, thanks everybody, and have a good night, y'all.
Cool. Thanks, No Himbo.